The story begins in the woods, in which men with guns were gathered. They looked like bandits. One of them said that a gentleman who had already been killed should be more careful when holding a locket in his hand. The dogs, which were being held with ropes, began barking loudly. Traveling unaccompanied could turn into an accident, and now this gentleman would become fodder for the wolves. The medallion was thrown at the bloody feet, and then the people left. To prevent local government corruption, the royal court sent out auditors with extensive powers to investigate secretly, and a large number of these auditors died under mysterious circumstances. Lots of people were working on the beds, and there were sentries standing by to supervise their work. People in white robes did various jobs in the mud while others looked on. The man told them to hurry, for the governor had ordered them to finish the dam as soon as possible. The man told them to hurry, for the governor had ordered them to finish the dam as quickly as possible. As it turned out, an auditor came to their town, but tragedy befell him. The fat man enjoyed the company of the beautiful and young girls who serviced him. A subordinate came in and reported to him that he had dealt with the auditor on his orders. The man praised him. He said their mountain was a dangerous place and laughed. He asked what the man was doing and threw a bundle of gold coins in front of him. He said that all those involved would be generously gifted. Some strange man approached. The guards asked him who he was and replied that there was no passage. The man showed the medallion and identified himself as the royal auditor. The guards were very surprised and probably starting to get nervous. The guard ran up to his master and said that the auditor had arrived for an audit. The auditor ordered that all ledgers be brought to the main hall where he would examine them personally. He also said the pantry will be sealed until the inspection is completed, and anyone violating the ordinance will be charged with trespassing. He turned to the people who were already getting goosebumps and even starting to get nervous. The man replied that he stopped at the communications office to get workers from the station. He asked why they were not there and they would be penalized separately. He told them to bring all the documents to the main hall without delay, and violations would be severely punished. He sat as if he were the lord of the house and addressed the viceroy. The man said that on his way here, he saw the deplorable condition of the inhabitants. This settlement is a breadbasket, but it was not prospering at all. He asked what was the reason. He condemned the viceroy and told him to make a report immediately and bring it before the feast. Sweat dripped down the viceroy's forehead, and he agreed with what the auditor was saying.
The viceroy shouted at the people and asked why he was alive, since they were supposed to deal with him. Someone answered that it was the work of demons.
They took care of everything properly and even covered their tracks. The old man told him to shut up, for he had not finished his work and had made a false report. He had no right to mock the viceroy. He told them to stop making excuses. The revisor was staying overnight at the guest house, so they must not make any mistakes this time. He said to do everything in front of him. They went over the wall. It was noticeable the room where the auditor sat. One man commented that it was strange. A second man agreed. They were sure it was the man they had killed in the afternoon and fed to the dogs. That's very unusual. He said to be quiet. He can't be a ghost because he's wandering around in the daylight. They just look alike or twins. There's no stopping a man even if he's a ghost. He has a way of dealing with it. The auditor sat quietly reading in the guest house. But here comes a bomb that's about to go off. There was a huge explosion. The man was getting ready to throw the next bomb. He told the auditor to go to hell and threw a bomb. There was another explosion. The man said that ghost bombs are special weapons. The viceroy came to see everything with his own eyes. He asked what all the rumbling was about. The man apologized and said it looked like the revisor had accidentally exploded while checking gunpowder. The old man replied that it was a serious matter. He said to get it out and bury it. But then the man was surprised at what he saw. A man's silhouette could be seen among the ruins after the explosion. It was the same auditor. He said he saw these guys up on the hill this afternoon. They just couldn't believe what he said. This is the second time he's survived. He asked the old man what he was up to. The revisor said to tell him straight. But then the guards came running at once. They're aiming right at the auditor. The old man replied that it was a pity he did not know he was king in this city. He ordered the revisionists killed and the guards opened fire. But it was all useless. The bullets felt like they were hurtling against metal. The revisor's wings appeared and his eyes glowed. People started screaming about him being a vampire. The man yelled for them to keep shooting. The revisor shouted for darkness to appear. His medallion began to send out dark smoke. Monsters with sharp teeth were flying out of it. A monster like that easily killed a man who could do nothing. As they flew, their facial expressions were quite creepy. The guards shot at them with fear in their eyes. But it was pointless. The monster bit the man and the man started screaming. His skin turned pale and green liquid spurted from his mouth. The infected began attacking their own, who didn't realize what was happening to them. People were screaming for help, but no one would help them in this situation. The revisor said that a person bitten by a bat would not live even if alive, and would not die even if killed. He would simply turn into a zombie and kill everyone, not separating the nobles from the plebs. It was their punishment for breaking the law, therefore they must accept it. The next day, in the palace, someone was shouting about the news that had been making news all over the country lately, namely about the appearance of a vampire who calls himself the Dark Auditor. The murder of government officials, massacres of viceroys, officers, and soldiers are everywhere. One said there was no proof he was a vampire. The other, however, said that those who were victimized by the self-proclaimed Dark Auditor turned into zombies. Only a vampire can create a zombie, and that's a serious problem. Officials said they needed to raise an army to subdue him. Someone asked if it was true and if zombies had appeared. They said yes. Their people were originally born to defeat vampires. Hwanun raised the heroine Unyo, training her in darkness and feeding her garlic to resist vampires. Ordinary people also fought vampires by wrapping themselves in garlic and eating it. Even today, kimchi is made from garlic stored for the winter. The woman said that thousands of years have passed since they fought desperately to drive the vampires from the land. And now an official is claiming that the vampires are back. She can't even imagine the confusion that will settle among the people. The official called the woman the Queen Dowager and said they needed to deal with the vampire quickly. She replied that he was right and asked how to deal with him. The official responded that he could just have faith, and strategies and tactics will make things happen. The Queen Dowager asked why he was making a fuss. The officials bowed sharply and apologized. If they rally an army against a vampire whose existence they are unsure of, the country will be in for a difficult time. Therefore, it was worth sending a skillful swordsman and quietly eliminating him. Beyond the Queen Dowager's words, the official said, a thief who is about 15 years old is active on Taibek Mountain. He excels in martial arts and tactics, and is skillful with weapons and magic technology. The queen replied that if he was a citizen of their country, he must obey and go to kill the vampire. She asked what his name was. His last name is Hong, and the name is Gildon. Hong Gildon, who, as it turns out, became a thief at the age of 13. Monster asked if he was the Hong Gildon who shoots silver bullets. Today, they will avenge their brothers. He replied that he didn't. He gave his last name as Hong, but added kill, what it means to kill. The monster called him an idiot, as she could easily dodge such a simple shot. There was an explosion, and his voice that Don said, a blow that brings instant death because he is Hong Gildon. At first the land and people were ruled by vampires, but with the help of Hwanun, who came down from heaven, the humans were able to resist them. The heroine Unyo, who was raised by Hwanun, used a stake to imprison the vampire king in a shindansu. The vampire king was sealed forever, and the remaining vampires scattered throughout the world. The vampire king said she could only stop him temporarily, not kill him. He rebels every time he finds a new source of energy. He shouted that the war was not over, and it was a curse for her people. Sometime after defeating the vampires, the heroine left an admonition for humans. She said that without garlic, they might be attacked by vampires in winter. To always be ready before an attack, every year before winter came, they should pickle garlic and call it kinjan. She also told them to eat fresh garlic regularly, so that vampires would not be able to infiltrate them. Since then, several dynasties have changed. For generations, there has been an endless war with the vampires. The man was looking at a book inside the house. There was a woman near him who was also minding her own business. She called the man Gildon and asked him how school was going. As it turned out, it was his mother, and he said yes. She said she would then put out the light and continue slicing rice cakes, and he would keep writing. She wants to see who can do it better, but he lit the candle again. He said there was no need to put out the candles, for he was studying. The woman sat with a bloody hand. She asked for forgiveness, because her son was trying to study in such a poor house, and she couldn't even pay for the academy tuition. Gildon told her not to hide her worries from him anymore. She asked him if he had any questions. He asked where his dad was. Gildon repeated his question again. The woman replied that he had gone to America to make a lot of money. He asked her to stop and tell the truth about where his daddy was. She corrected him to call him dad. She sighed as if she realized her excuses weren't working anymore. This conversation was inevitable, and she told him to look at the bandage. Gildon asked what it was. His father is a warrior who hides in Spain and brings justice. He was a great hero. The woman said her father gave the bandage to her and told her to give it to him when Gildon got older. But it's too early for him to try on the hero mask, but she'll tell him since he cares so much. He ran out of the house in tears, kicking the door and screaming. He thought, what good is a hero? Gildon wants to succeed in life. He wanted fame, money, a big house and a good furnace. That's why he studied so hard. He is destined to live in Kachin for the rest of his life and pray that the water is suitable for a Muji, who is a sea serpent and can become a dragon. Temperature. Gildon cannot call his own daddy, namely father. The civil servant exam has changed, and now you have to submit certificates of academic achievement, work experience documents, and a recommendation from your father. If there is no father, one cannot even apply for the exam. Gildon didn't know how to contain his anger when everything he'd learned was in vain. A world in which it is impossible to reveal oneself, even if one has knowledge and skills. This world defines a person's life according to the nobility of the family. Gildon wanted a place in this land. All he inherited was a mask like a thief. A beam appeared from his eyes. All skills were increasing damage dealt by 100%, reducing damage received by 80%, increasing experience by 100%, and increasing the chance of getting a magic item by 100% were unlocked. He was caught in a bright dome, and his mom ran up to him. She screamed that he would be damned if he wore that mask. They need to talk right now. But he didn't realize what the curse was then. Then he woke up. He dreamed about the house again. He noticed the hat. It was some small beast with a suitcase that stood by the door. He said he waited for him while Gildon slept. He asked if everything was ready. The unknown thing began to twist and glow, as if it was sticking something in. She drew something from her surroundings. A pouch of 100% pure silver with accumulated experience points for Gildon appeared. He said that Gildon distributed all the wealth he received to the poor, but he didn't understand why the man was so diligent in collecting pure silver. He asked if it was to make silver bullets. He replied that it was to break his curse. Such bullets can only be made from pure silver and can only be found in their otherworldly shop. Monster bowed and thanked him for choosing their store. They always sell merchandise at the best price. And before he left, he remembered something. He said some vampires showed up and began to act secretly on his own. The moment of the Vampire King's return is imminent. A man asked if his amulet of 8 spirits could find a vampire. He was told no. He said he needed to be upgraded to gain more experience points, because vampires are high-level monsters. Even if a man is very strong, he should still avoid a vampire if he meets one. He didn't mean to hurt him, he just asked him to be careful because he didn't want to lose his business. The man replied, no matter how strong he was, he would die if he met him, because he's Gildon. A small square was in sight, where many wanderers were present. Someone was trumpeting an interesting thing and making strange noises. It was an old woman in unusual clothes. She was saying that His Majesty was coming soon. She shouted for His Majesty with her entire entourage. The king of all monsters is coming. She told everyone to run away and not to stay in town. Don't trust anyone, because trouble was coming. People said that there was a mess. Even the shaman started talking nonsense. It was also said that thieves had carved up 6 houses in Gilgol. The viceroy won't even go to scout the situation, let alone catch the culprit. The taxes on these houses are now being paid by the neighbors. They also remark about the Vampire King and how the world is on the brink of disaster. The Dark Revisor asked for raw beef without sesame oil, after which he paid for what he was given. It follows a rocky road where there were also many trees. As usual, he met an armed man on his way. Behind him, people like him came up behind him. The man said that he should keep his money where no one could see it. It should not be hung up so openly like a cowbell around a cow's neck. He can't save him now. But if he has something to say, let him say it. The reviewer responded that he did it intentionally, and there's a little bit missing here. Bandit asked, wondering what the hell that was all about. The revisor immediately bared his blade and struck, and his blow cut through the sword, the wood, and the man's neck. He let out black smoke, and that grabbed the rest of the bandits. Blood began to ooze out through their skin. A moment later, he had a tangle of their blood. That blood began to be absorbed by his hand. After that, it darkened and looked like some monster's hand. An officer has arrived at the order of the master. The official said it was a very important matter, and he would give him 2 envelopes. As soon as he leaves the city, he must open the first envelope. His mission is written there, and he must proceed to fulfill it immediately. He accepted his instructions, after which I ran to complete the mission. The other man asked if they could entrust such an important mission to a low-ranking man. The first man replied that Anson was a budding young officer, though short. He's brave and bright, so he's the right man for the job. He quickly headed for the exit from the city. He ran out behind the wall. Anson opened the envelope as he was told and read the contents. A magpie flew up to him. Magpie asked what it said. He replied that he needed to find Han Gildon and deliver the second envelope to him. It said that at the age of 5 he had read The 1,000 Years, and at the age of 10 he had studied Tsuji Tongjian, Huang Shigong's 3 strategies, the art of war, and other Chinese treatises on military affairs on his own. Soroka asked if he knew how to find the tough guy and deliver the second envelope to him. Anson replied that they would find out now. He began to run fast and the magpie flew after him. They ran in day. We also flew at night. In the morning, Chunsu the dwarf came to the gate to repay his debt. Today is the end of the term, so he should definitely return it. The guard opened the door a little and said that his master was busy. He was told to wait, but he kept pounding on the door and saying it was Chunsu the dwarf. The sun was already setting, and he was told that he could not disturb his master just because he owed him a debt. He began to be beaten by others with sticks and feet. Then a voice came from the manor saying to let him in. He was walking down a dark hallway. He also asked where He noticed the door ajar. There was a big rooster eating a man. He told him to wait. He was late, but he still got the money back, so he would eat the meat and return the bones to him. Chunsu fell to the floor and started screaming. The rooster's paw grabbed his leg. He asked if he ate him too. He wouldn't have to give something back. Chunsu yelled for help. There was an explosion. Gildon sat on the roof and watched what had happened. His amulet began to shake and glow. He was sitting there waiting for the signal, and there was a demon. He said that if an ordinary person was attracted to the dark side and craved for something bad, he would eventually lose his body and become a monster. The rooster spat out the man. He replied that he had heard of the famous Hong Gildon. He asked if he thought that if he killed a monster, he would be appointed to a high position in this country. That's not how it works here. Whereupon he called him a bastard. The man replied that he hadn't thought about that. He also asked if he was trying to break the curse. The rooster pierced the ceiling below him, but the man calmly bounced away from it. He flung his sharp feathers in his direction, but he calmly repelled them while the people below began to fuss and shout about the monster's appearance. The rooster replied that his sharp feathers could block all spears and bullets. He would only kick him a little. And if he wants to overpower him, he'll have to use a silver bullet. But that didn't stop Gildon, and he punctured his stomach with his blast. The monster didn't know what it was. A green liquid poured out of him. The man replied that even with that protection he would die, because he's Han Gildon. The monster fell right into the house. The man said you don't need silver bullets for someone like him. He's the one they make them out of. But something still surprised the man. No experience points were accumulated. Here the rooster split in two. They flew off in different directions away from him. One of them said he would catch him and kill him. He can come back to life, even if only one clone of him is alive. But that didn't seem to surprise him at all. He just torched his weapon. After which he jumped up. The second rooster said he would tell the vampire king that he had killed him. But he wasn't listening at all to what that monster was saying. His fireball hit the monster directly. Fire was burning one of the clones, and he said it was impossible. It was Gildon's special weapon. There were 2 explosions, east and west. He stood in a tree and watched it. The man replied that his special dual weapons never miss. His amulet absorbed the red smoke. Joseon is a country built on the land of vampires after they were banished. When the humans become weak, the vampires return to this land to reclaim it. The king passed away suddenly, and a young prince took the throne, causing a power struggle to begin. Inside the land, shamans prophesied the return of the vampire king, and monsters spread evil and harmed the humans. It was a small hut that was surrounded by fields. The child told the grandmother that he was hungry and also asked when mom and dad were coming. The grandmother replied that they had gone to return the debt and would be back soon. Grandma heard a knock on the door. She immediately ran out and saw them. Grandma said what a relief that they were okay. She was also very surprised when she saw the money and rice. Gildon brought it all. A curse is placed on whoever wears the mask of a hero. Instead of gaining great power and using it to his own advantage, a man can only use it to protect others. And that power is wielded by him, Hong Gildon. 2 girls were standing near the altar. One asked what to do, for the fire had gone out again. Mistress could still find out, and then everything would get a slap on the wrist. The girls started to panic. A man appeared behind them. At the snap of a finger he got sparks. After which, he easily ignited what they couldn't. The girls rejoiced because the fire appeared. They asked who he was. The man replied that one should help those in need, even if it is something insignificant, because he is Han Gildon. After ranting, he epically walked away. He didn't know why he used that jump rather than just walking away. But he decided he wasn't going to dwell on it. He craves justice, and he needs it. Many people gathered near the walls. The captured boy sat and waited. It is now that the thief's trial will take place. A huge man came in with a gun that he was wearing a military uniform. He said that as a serviceman, the boy was allowed to carry a gun. He was obliged to maintain public order. But he stole government grain and robbed barns several times using his gun. And even when caught, he is unrepentant and claims that he did not steal for himself, but to help people. The man said it was a more serious offense, but as an honest judge, he will give him a chance to acquit himself before the people. The boy said he had done nothing wrong, and he searched his house. The government grain did not go to the people who were dying of hunger. So the people destroyed and looted the barns of Mr. Choi and Mr. Park because they were in debt due to the high price of grain. The guy couldn't reach an agreement with the barn owners, so he used a gun. Their laws are infinitely kind to some and infinitely unjust to others. Just at that exact time, Anson passed by, running his errand. The judge asked what happens to those who break the laws. Mr. Choi and Mr. Park would not engage in such financial matters without his permission. The judge should be chopping his head off with his mace right now. Well, first he's going to check the truth of his words. If any of those gathered here were dividing among themselves the plundered grain or property, he told them to come forward. Of course, no one will do that, because everyone fears for their lives. There was silence. He tapped his mace. The judge told them to confess if any of them got something from the thief. The people were silent. The judge told the thief to look at it. He asked if he had given all this wealth to some other village, for no one was saying anything. The guy was visibly agitated and sweat began to trickle down his face. But it was as if no one saw his gaze, and the residents immediately turned away. The judge said that not only was he refusing to repent, but he was trying to cheat the law. A little girl came up behind him and said that it was not true. She called this guy Shandol's brother and replied that he was telling the truth. They really shared everything between them. She came out in front of the crowd and said they all did it so they wouldn't starve to death. The judge said it was interesting, and he asked if the kid was telling the truth or not. People started saying it wasn't true. They hadn't taken anything. In fact, this girl is an orphan, so she went crazy with poverty. She said she wasn't crazy, they're all lying. Tears came to her eyes. She told them to say thank you, because they had been helped. She didn't understand why they pretended not to know anything. The guy told her to stop. He replied that it was fine, and he was glad to hear that at least one person was on his side. The judge is ready to pass sentence. He said to tie him up in front of the gate and give him no food or water. If he really helped them, they would feed him. Otherwise, he will starve to death. If he doesn't die within 100 days, he will acquit him. Anson stepped out among the crowd. He said he was a wanderer who came from another village. He apologized and said he didn't think the guy was lying. If anyone present admits to getting anything from those barns, that person will be charged with accessory after the fact. People are afraid and won't confess, so in the end, it's no justice at all. A small chuckle appeared on the judge's face. He ordered a suspicious boy to be caught. He shouted out not to be touched. He showed his ID and said his name was Officer Anson, not the suspicious kid. The judge said that if the military officer in front of them was a military officer, he must have been on some kind of mission. He said not to interfere with fair justice, but to do your duty. There were still guns pointed at him. He apologized and asked for the right ruling. After a moment, he was already running. Soroka asked if he would just leave like that. The officer replied that there was nothing wrong in the viceroy's words. Besides, he should not forget that he is entrusted with an important mission. Gildon was watching the whole thing. He knew we would soon have a moment of justice. But he's wondering what's going to happen next, so he's going to watch some more. As the verdict was in, there was a guy tied up in front of the gate. A little girl went around asking to be given some rice. People refused so that they would not be thought to be accomplices. They told her not to come again and to watch her words, for they might all be executed. She went up to the guy and apologized because she couldn't get the rice. There was just water in the plate. He thanked her and told her not to come here again. The girl's tears couldn't stop. It was a scorching sun. The guy was still tied to the pole. There was a sign near it that said that the thief claimed to have looted the barns for the sake of the people. Food and water could only be given to him by those who received a part of the looted goods. The dark auditor saw the whole picture. His shadow loomed over the boy. The guy barely asked who it was. The revisor made a small cut on his finger. His blood dripped down to the boy's mouth. After that, the boy seemed to come alive. The revisor watched him. The guards were puzzled. Gildon noticed some scientists showing up as well. He watched it with his magic finger telescope technique. He wondered if someone would give food to the boy, and if justice would happen. The reviewer said the boy woke up as soon as she tasted his blood. He's got a lot of guts. He said he liked the boy and was looking for someone like him. The guards fussed and pointed their weapons at him. He turned slowly toward them. One guard asked where Mr. Scientist was from. The other said that the boy was a criminal. The Dark Auditor asked, "So what?" They replied that the Viceroy had ordered the arrest of anyone who gave him food. They must tie him up. He replied that there was no need for that. He would go voluntarily to their Viceroy. Gildon was still watching it all from the tree. The revisor turned to the boy and told him to wait, for he would be back soon. The guy replied that he didn't have to do that, but the revisor was taken to the city. Gildon said it's interesting. Things are bad, because the scientist is eventually captured as well. It was the viceroy's house. They reported to him that they had collected all the property and land titles from the people. The man replied that it wasn't enough. He shouted that it wasn't enough and he wanted to return to the capital. Whatever you collect in this village is garbage. If he wants to get a high position, he has to give valuable bribes to all officials. He kicked all the paperwork his employee had gathered. He said to listen to him carefully. The subordinate answered with fear. He told him to at least rub his hides off, but to make sure he collected 1,000,000 yang by the end of the year, or else he would sell it to the Qing Empire. He threw the subordinate out of his house and told him to piss off. A guard stood beside his subordinate, looking at him with some fear. After that, he told his lord that they had caught a man giving food to a thief. The governor asked what was wrong with him. After all, he had orders to kill anyone who gave him food. The guard said it was most likely a high-ranking nobleman. The governor had to figure out what to do with such individuals. If it's an official, there will be a riot. He ordered him to be locked up and he would deal with him later. He went into his house and said that no one could do his job properly. He can't be the viceroy of this village. A great man like him will not rot here for the rest of his years. It's not enough for him. That's very little for him, and not enough. A creature of some sort appeared in front of him. The viceroy asked with horror who he was. The unknown man replied that he was a great figure like him. They had met at the wrong time. He threw off what was covering his face, for he wanted to look at it. But his own face appeared before him and the creature asked, and it was his wish. The creature replied that he had unexpectedly petty desires, and the clothes of a mere viceroy did not suit him. The monster appeared wearing the clothes of a higher rank. He said these clothes fit him better, and asked if he was wrong. The viceroy replied that he was right and asked who he was. The creature told him to enchant into the darkness, so he can keep going deeper and deeper into her. The viceroy shouted for him to let him see, and showed him even more. Meanwhile, the dark auditor sat locked up. He asked when the viceroy was coming. The guard told him to be quiet, and asked why he had interfered in the first place. If there is anything he can do to save himself, now is the time. If he can give a big ransom or promote the viceroy, he'd better do it. Otherwise, tonight, they will be executed together with Chandol standing tied up. The revisor replied that he understood, and he would wait for the time being. Another guard came in. They talked among themselves about the fact that he had beaten her so badly. The other one said that she had made him very angry. He told the other guard not to point him out, and that she had asked for it. The revisor glimpsed a glimpse of the child. People began to gather near the wall again. The guy realized he was about to be executed, but was surprised they hadn't set a date. But for him it was better than dying slowly here. Gildon appeared in front of the guards. It was as if he was satisfied that it was finally his time to act. He walked over to the tied-up guy while the others told him to get out of here quickly and pointed their guns. He said to lift his feet and laughed. The others did not understand why he was laughing. He kicked his foot against the pole where the fire appeared. The pole where the guy was tied fell and rolled with him. Others were shocked by what they saw. And then the song came on about how he is the one who lights the fire of justice. He is Gildon, and here is a great hero. The others heard his song. He gave him a bottle of water and told him to drink it. The guards wanted to catch the thief and an accomplice. Gildon asked why he was tied up. If he had enough strength, he could get out. Still, his song was playing. In the meantime, it's an injustice. An evil law is not a law. Gildon called him curious. The boy asked who was singing that. Gildon replied that it wasn't about that right now. He was told to put his hands behind his head and get on his knees. If he did not obey, he would be killed right now. He asked if this was their weapon and told them to listen here. Today justice will be served because he's here, Hong Gildon. The revisor turned his attention to the girl and used his power. He turned her over. There was blood on the girl's face, and she was covered in abrasions. You could see anger and probably a bit of pity in the expression on the auditor's face. The girl's awake. He asked her what happened to her. He said the royal auditor was undercover. The girl cheered up immediately. She sat down and asked to save Chandol if he was really the royal auditor. Chandol and her were starving because of all the things the villagers were doing. They were unable to pay their debts and could become slaves, so he broke into the village's warehouse to get food. He's the only reason she survived because her parents aren't alive. A man like him doesn't deserve to die. She also said that the viceroy is very scary and uses his rank to control people. He shouldn't follow his orders. They are unfair. The reviewer responded that she was correct. There was only one thing she wanted, namely to save Chandol. After that, she fell down. A guard came up and asked if it was true that he was the royal auditor. He apologized and said he would be released right away. But then he was stopped by the transformed viceroy and asked what he was trying to do. Prisoners are supposed to stay locked up. If he died like that, would anyone care? His head was crushed by the viceroy. He took one look and asked if he was the royal auditor. The auditor called him cruel, a ruler who daily stains his own lands with blood. He knew immediately that it was the revisionist vampire. Now he knows why he is in this dungeon. He waits for night to get rid of the viceroy. But it's still daytime. What will he be able to do to him? Meanwhile, the guards were still trying to capture and kill Gildon. He deftly dodged their spears, after which he kicked one of the guards. He told them to come up and fight him. The guy asked how he did it, and if he was from the royal army too. Gildon replies that even though he wears their uniform, it doesn't make him part of the royal army. He is just doing what is right and what needs to be done. And someone killing innocent people like they do can't be a real royal army. The royal guard has arrived. They asked where he was from. And how dare he make a mess, breaking the law here in a place guarded by the royal guards. They were loading the guns, Gildon asked, wondering if he'd had enough. He said they must know him well if they are the real royal guard, and they should know he was innocent. The man replied that they were true royal soldiers, but here to carry out their orders. Gildon figured them out, because at least once in a while they don't turn on their brains and just do whatever they're told. A true soldier wouldn't point a gun at an innocent man. Then a woman ran through the crowd and said there was trouble. She said that the girl, Dell, wanted to bring him food, but she was beaten by soldiers and locked in a dungeon by order of the viceroy. He didn't understand what the hell she was doing. He stood up at once. He yelled that no matter what sins he had to commit, the viceroy wouldn't get away with it.
Someone from the guard said he was a soldier, even if in the reserves.
He fought bravely against Oren, but he broke the law, and now he has to answer for it. So he was told to lay down his arms and kneel down. He replied that he had had enough. Shandol is leaving. If they want to shoot him, go ahead. He picked up his shield and weapon, then began to run. The soldiers opened fire. The boy was already covered by his shield, but no bullets were flying at him. He noticed that. The guy in charge asked what the hell they were doing. Are they so blind that they can't even shoot him? He said not to let the guy run away and reload his weapon. Shandol realized that Uncle Chan was trying to help him in some way, but then the spear pierced his hat, and it flew right at the guy. Gildon manages to buck him off, though. After which it flew into the wall. The man on the horse said how disrespectful of them to block his path. Do they really want to make him angry? People began to flee, for it was Gaps's unit. The man ordered them killed. They headed straight for Gildon and Shandol. The man had already prepared himself. He used his feng shui technique, the Black Dragon Ascending Rod. He said he didn't like hitting people, so he had to hold back. But it seemed to work out pretty well. The squad leader drew his sword. He pointed the sharp blade. The boys successfully dodged it. They noticed the effects of this technique on the wall. Gildon said it wasn't bad, and he didn't even get off his horse. His amulet began to glow again. Gildon wondered if this was some kind of circus trick. He wondered how he would react to his amulet. The commander asked if it was a bell. Gildon replied that such an expensive and noble monster in such a backwater. The man realized he was the one. He called him a challenging thug and told his subordinates to line up. Gildon recoiled, and I ran away from that place. The man asked what about the boy. The boy looked confused. He realized he had to run. If he stays here, the others will be in danger. Gildon kept jumping.
The man galloped after him.
He was destroying everything in front of him. Gildon landed near the shore. Behind him was a boy who was tired after a long and fast run. He told him to wait. Gildon replied that he had jumped over the wall and asked how he had kept up with him. Shandol said he somehow made it. He needs a man's help. He asked to go with him to the state offices and help free Dell. Gildon replied that he was going to do it anyway, because it was justice. The boy thanked him for that. He says there's nothing to thank him for. As long as she stands there, his body is overflowing with justice. If he doesn't drop it in time, he doesn't even know what will happen to him. Shandol asked if they had pulled away from the army men enough. The man said no. The one he was about to kill had arrived. Shandol didn't realize at first who he was talking about, but then he saw the officer who was still chasing them. The officer laughed and said Gildon used chukchibop, which means shortening the physical distance, to separate him from the squad. His human shell began to fade. Gildon could recognize them. So the monster enjoyed it to the full. The boy looked on in shock at the sight. The monster swung his sword, but they had time to recoil. The boy asked what it was. Gildon answered his question with a question about whether he had ever seen a demon. Horse said he doesn't know what links Han Gildon to them demons, but the time has come. The day the sun and the moon cross. The day when, for the first time in 2,500 years, a rift opens between the underworld and the human world. A chance for vampires to reclaim this land. His master would be the new king of this world. The boy shrieked at the unexpected news. Chandal asked why he was even telling them this. Gildon called the guy an idiot and told him to stay out of his way. After all, it's interesting. The monster replied, when he first heard about him, he immediately wanted to fight. The monster asked, wondering why he wasn't attacking. The horse had heard that you could collect corpses from the demons he killed and still have a few left over. He asked where the almighty Hong Gildon was. He told him to show him everything he could. The guy covered himself with a shield against this destructive energy. But Gildon was motionless before the blade. But of course it won't kill him. He replied that Gildon was no match for this ball. The horse was telling him to stop running. He wanted to show him something else, namely the flickering blade technique. Well, the man decided to use his magic too. It was a ghostly separation. The monster shouted what kind of magic it was. Gildon said that since he was using magic, he should return the favor. He used artillery, an absolute victory of equilibrium. His magic was burning the monster alive. Burned, he fell. Gildon held a gun to him. The monster was telling him to stop and asking him if he knew who the monster was. He waits here at Master's command. He has no idea what he'll be protecting himself against if he kills him. But understandably, that didn't stop the man. There was an explosion. The guy replied that he had never seen a battle like that. It was amazing. Gildon said that it appeared that the guy had a lot of questions piling up. Chandal replied that the skill was incredible. And even after all he had seen, he still couldn't recognize his tool. His amulet absorbed the very red smoke. He replied that he had probably had quite an experience. He had not come across such valuable ones for a long time. Chandal couldn't believe that there were demons masquerading as humans. Besides, he was commanding people in the guise of an army officer. The man replied that he was done here. And he also reminded him that it seemed like someone had to be taken out of jail. The guy replied that yes, and they should head there soon. They punched a hole in the goal. The guy didn't understand what was wrong with state government, what had happened here in the first place. He ran to the prison. He called out for Della everywhere. Chandal reached the cells where the prisoners were to sit, but hanging from the tree was the viceroy's corpse. They stared at the sight. Gildon asked if that wasn't the viceroy. The boy replied that it was. He asked where Dell was and what happened to the viceroy. The guards arrived, which were also surprised by what they saw. The man said he killed the viceroy. Chandal said it was a misunderstanding. When they came here, he was already like this. The guy said they all heard when he said that the viceroy would not live. He doesn't deny it, but they didn't kill him. They're here to save the girl. The man asked if that meant he killed the viceroy for that child. She's not in prison, and he asks if he knows where she is at all. Chandal replied that he didn't know why he was looking for her. When they arrived, she was gone. Gildon replied that the kid was right and he knew what had happened. But the other man shouted that he was an accessory in general. He told them to stop and get on their knees, for he was arresting them. Gildon was still standing on the fact that the guy didn't do anything. The man told him to shut up, and he's under arrest. He asked if Chandal wanted to go to jail. The boy replied that he didn't, because he hadn't done anything. Gildon said he doesn't want to go anywhere there either. So he took the guy, and they ran away. People were yelling that they were running away and needed to be caught up. The guards watched their escape. They were shouted to them to go and find those who had escaped, but there was something missing. The viceroy's body is missing. The guards said that maybe he had fallen somewhere. The men replied that they had enough problems right now. He ordered them to just find the body and take it to the infirmary. But then footsteps were heard. It was the viceroy. People were frightened when they saw it. In fact, it wasn't the only zombie. People started running and talking about the viceroy becoming a zombie. They were screaming about being attacked by vampires. Meanwhile, in the woods, they finally ran away and rested. The guy doesn't know what's even going on or what just happened. And more importantly, what about Dell? He doesn't even know what to do. Gildon replied that a vampire had done it. A ruined government, a viceroy's fortune, and his soul eaten. This is what happens when you succumb to darkness. Chandal asked what darkness was. Gildon replied that it is a monster that gets its energy from eating human souls. Darkness promises people the fulfillment of their deepest desires. And when they make a pact, their wishes begin to come true, and their souls are slowly consumed by the darkness. Eventually, the person doesn't even realize how he becomes a demon and joins the darkness. Guy asked if that meant it was still growing. If so, they should destroy it as soon as possible. He was told that darkness cannot be destroyed, because it is a demon that feeds on human desires. Chandal replied it seemed to him, or he had a wish that was too specific. He also asked if it meant that the viceroy died because of the darkness. But then it is not clear what happened to Dell. She wasn't in prison. Gildon said that darkness can completely consume the soul of the host. After that, she switches to the next target. Someone in the neighborhood. Maybe the girl won't be the next victim, because an honest person without dark desires will be immune to the darkness. The guy knelt down and called him Hyungnim, which is a respectful way for a guy to refer to a man older than him. He said he knew he should be ashamed of himself, but he was asking for help to find and rescue Dal. If he helps him, he will gladly consecrate the rest of his life to him. Gildon replied that he didn't need to beg him, because he is Hon Gildon, a man of goodwill. He thanked Gildon and said he would follow him wherever he went. Gildon said the guy could call him Gildon. He also remarked that the guy looked very young and asked how old he was. Chandol replied that he turned 16 last month and also asked how old he was. But Gildon decided not to answer his question and said in regards to Del. He asked if there was any speculation about what had happened to the prison where she was being held. The viceroy slapped the auditor. He said if he ate vampire flesh or drank blood, he would absorb the same amount of energy as if he had evolved over hundreds or even thousands of years. It bit him. He thought this was his chance, that the gods favored him. But something was wrong. The auditor asked what was wrong. Didn't he want to eat it? He told him to try to get a better life. The viceroy said he'd tear him apart. The revisor told him to hurry up because the sun was about to rise. He won't get anything if he just undresses him and stares. He punched the vampire and told him to shut up. The viceroy won't leave a wet spot for a vampire who doesn't even know who he is. He is the king of this country. The vampire noticed that the magic was about to hit the girl. He stretched out his fingers. His sword reacted to him. He began to reflect what was flying at her. The sword hovered in front of the girl, as if protecting her. The viceroy asked what he was staring at and if he was trying to help her. He realized that for a vampire, it was just a game. He also realized that vampires really loved their games. But now it was time for him to die. The viceroy will destroy him with his power. No sooner had he let loose his charge than the vampire punched him in the face. The viceroy's power pierced the roof. His mouth began to bleed. A vampire towered over him and called him viceroy. He said that the governor took greedy advantage of his position and tortured his people. He abused the innocent and threatened the people around him. He not only betrayed the support of the people who supported him, but also showed his failure as the ruler of this country. Now it was time for him to answer for his transgressions and become a true example to the people. He called out the darkness, but something caught his attention. He noticed something jumping in the distance. With his vision, he was able to see who it was. Specifically, a guy he didn't know that helped a boy who was tied to a pole. The viceroy was still shouting that he was the ruler of this country, but the vampire used his amulet. Monsters appeared from it and headed towards the viceroy. They started eating him. The revisor spread his wings and flew, with the girl in his arms. He's landed, and he saw the burned part of the pole. Meanwhile, people were shouting and asking what happened to the state government, and the vampire looked toward the forest. To his hand flew his sword. Chandol and Gildon were about to leave. The boy asked where they were going. Gildon replied that to the supreme constellation, to God, who embodies the wisdom of all life, in a dream within a dream that is in another dream. In the place that is inside 9 consecutive dreams, a person lives. It was the Dream Lord that taught Gildon everything. He called for transportation, namely a palanquin. Chandol said it was his first time riding a palanquin. Gildon corrected him and said it was a palanquin, not a palanquin. But the guy was having fun. They arrived in the capital city of Hanyang, specifically the Burning Sun. Chandol gazed at the beautiful girls. Now he realized what kind of world Gildon was talking about. A girl came out to meet them. It was the owner of the Talking Sun, Yule. She and Gildon knew each other. The man said he didn't come here for fun. She asked if he was busy today, and it's been a long time since they've had fun together. Life is very short, especially for a man like him. He replied that he needed to meet the Dream Lord. The girl replied that it was a shame because she was hoping to hear him rap. The Lord was inside. There's a portal there. They entered it. Chandol thought, so this is where Teacher Kuman lives. It's like he's in a dream. It was like a dream. Then he wondered who Teacher Kuman was. There were lots of books everywhere. They appeared as if they were in some kind of warehouse. A dark silhouette could be seen on top of the books that said they hadn't seen Gildon in a while. It was the 3rd regent of the supreme constellation, Kumon Anbondason. He asked who the child was. Gildon replied that it was Chandol. He met him when he was hunting a vampire. It was his first time going through the dream sequence, so he was nervous. He also had some new information. It's about a demon he recently caught, and the situation between the abyss and the human world. He said that the Vampire King was returning and was going to destroy humanity. He's also looking for a girl named Del. She was next to the vampire he was chasing. She was in Chandol's mind at that moment. but the girl definitely doesn't look like that. The guy noticed he couldn't speak. He thinks he has sleep paralysis. Kumon said he would see where Dell was now. He looked in his book. Looks like the girl was alive. That's good news. Gildon said all a guy has to do is find her. But the bad news was that name, Mindel, is on the list of vampires and demons. After that, the guy immediately woke up. Kumon asked how he was doing, since this was his first awakening in a dream. He also commented that he was a very energetic child, but Chandol kept asking about the girl and if she had become a vampire. Gildon said he also learned that the Vampire King would soon be resurrected, and then he attacks the human world. Kumon called it interesting. Vampires have never gotten along with other demons. In this case, racism is great for them. The last thing they need is for the Abyss and the Underworld to unite, but that means that humanity will soon have to face two monstrous forces. But given the current state of their world, they won't notice much difference. The boy asked what they should do now, and what about the other regions? Kumon said that there was nothing he could do to help them, except to die senselessly. Even the other 3 remaining regents of the Supreme Constellation, namely Punbek, Usa, and Unsa, wouldn't be able to stand up to the Vampire King. He told them to go into the Abyss, for they would surely find something there. Gildon asked how he would get there. He also wants to know how to break his curse. Kumon replied that he had already taught Gildon all the magical studies available to humans. The lad called him a respected hermit, and said that he had taught him nothing. The regent asked if he wanted to learn, but no matter how strong he is, it's impossible for a human to do that. And in this case, he won't be able to help him find the girl. The guy replied that it didn't matter, and he agreed. Kumon replied that it was good. Gildon said if he ever faces opponents and doesn't know which one to kill, let him kill them both. That's what he calls Han Gildon. The hero's mask he wears is a trophy from a past war with the great demons. To the underworld, it's a symbol of power. Kumon said that Hwanin created a powerful orb, wanting to help the human world. Gildon's power is Honik Ingen, which means for the benefit of mankind. It is one of the greatest magical powers. However, if he falls into the hands of demons, what happens to his mask? They say you shouldn't even think about something like that. But now they've decided to talk about the Vampire King. Even Unsa, Usa, Punbek, and all of Samchon's forces that Hwanun brought from the heavens won't be able to handle the power of the Vampire King. It will be a very hard war if they don't have the most powerful force of the world. Gildon asked what they should do now. Hwanun had already helped them by giving humanity the magic sphere. If he gets rid of them before they get rid of him, will his curse of the mask disappear? Kumon replied that he would have to kill not only the demons, but also their king. Because of his power, he is at the absolute peak of his power. If he no longer wears the mask, his power will leave him. Gildon asked why he was calling him an idiot if he himself needed to get rid of the Vampire King and Demon King. Kumon replied that he was a weak idiot, and he had said that many times before. He wanted to continue, but Chandol stopped him, saying that it was a bit redundant. But Kumon said the weak can defeat even the strongest. People have invented and created many new things. In the past, they used only stones and bronze, but now they have mastered iron and many other materials. If the leader of mankind, all the heroes and other powerful forces cooperate, it will bring victory. If people utilize their full potential, they can expect amazing results. Chandol suggested that Gildon team up and find out where the Vampire King and Demon King are hiding. Then they could contact the royal service and tell them what they had discovered so that an army could be mobilized. Gildon refused because tough guys don't do that. Chandol started yelling. He asked the hermit where to find Del and the Demon King. Kumon replied that it was impossible to find the girl. She is not in the human world. Yule said that in order to find the Demon King, they had to know his name. So there was nothing she could do right now. Chandol asked if it could be darkness. Gildon replied that darkness could not be the Demon King. He said the darkness was just a bunch of parasites that devoured human desires. Just another pawn in the demon army. Kumon said they don't know the Demon King's name yet, but they have found his possible location. Chandol replied that they should alert the royal service. He asked where they were now. Kumon said at Gyeongbokgung Palace. Meanwhile, a bunch of people in dark clothes were running near the wall. In his room sat the little king. He was scared. His mom noticed that he was shaking and told him to rest. The boy replied that he was afraid. He's afraid they'll come after him again. The woman replied that there was no need to be afraid because his mom was here. She will protect him. The guards stood guard, but then the guard's throat was quickly slit, and he turned into some kind of beast. As one would assume, the guards were demons. They went on the attack. The men in black suits shouted that they were here to help His Majesty. They would save him. They need to find these devils. They will clear the royal court and protect His Majesty." The man shouted that he would punish them and save the country. But then he fell silent when he saw the giant woman. She replied that she was listening to him, and she asked why he was silent. He was definitely scared. He wanted to attack, but she had already managed to kill him. More people came running after him. She pierced the path for the thread with a needle, then tied the two men together. They began to retreat, for they realized they could not win without the right plan. But they won't go away that easily. She just killed another one. A large palm mark was left on the ground. There was a map in front of her. Those pesky insects won't be able to escape her. She immediately gave them a squeeze with her hand. People were screaming about her being a witch. The boy cried. The woman replied that he should not worry, for all was well now. The enemies are defeated. She told him to go get some sleep and his mom would guard him. There was a bat flying in the forest. She headed toward the big hole, after which she began to transform into a human. That bat was the auditor. He was going up to the manor house. He asked the merchant if he had brought what he said. The merchant bowed and asked to take this one. He handed him the box and asked him to check it out. They can always provide the best showers of the highest quality and at the best price. Gildon said you shouldn't expect help from the king, especially if there's something like this in the palace. If a guy tries to break in there and kill a demon, he'll be considered a traitor and killed. Besides, Gildon has his own ways. Kumon said that in that case, you need to collect magic items. Magic items are equipment created using the power of damaged demons. The more he collects, the stronger he becomes. After Gildon gathers enough, then he can do something incredible, namely to hire the Supreme Unyo. He was surprised to hear her name. Gildon asked if she was beautiful. Kumon replied that he was crazy because she was married. Kumon said to find Yule the location of the nearest magical item. She used her power to do it. He turned to Chandal. He suggested a test, PPA girl looking for magical items. The boy asked what the test was. It's a test to see if he can bear the journey and responsibility of fighting demons. The regent drew something on the paper. His scribbles came to life, and they had weapons. Gildon told him not to be afraid and he could do anything. But then his shield was pierced by a sword. That's when the boy realized they were real. He began to dodge their attacks, and even tried to throw punches. When he hit with his attack, the drawing began to fade away. He had already started running towards them. Kumon saw that he was doing pretty well, so he decided to make it a little more difficult. Not only were more swordsmen added, but archers appeared as well. He defended himself with his shield against the arrows. As soon as he was attacked, he immediately tried to block their blows. He used the art of Pyonggong, the wolfman, after which he crept up close to the archers and took them out with ease. Kumon said it's not bad, this kid has potential, but it's still not enough to deal with the demons. Now he decided to tackle the guy's gear. He took his gear, after which an upgraded weapon appeared in front of Chandol. The boy told him to get his weapon back. Kumon replied that he had not yet realized how much more powerful it had become. Here came a girl who was up to the task. Gildon was tossed a pouch with the location of the nearest magical item. He also wrote what they needed to watch out for. He wished them good luck. Chandol wanted to ask about the place, but didn't have time. He was awakened by the shouts of soldiers asking where he had fallen from. The guards were trying to wake him up. The sun was shining, you could get sunstroke, and it was the dry season. They were complaining that every weekend these drunks hang out here. There were a few more at the door. The guards didn't understand what was going on in this country at all. Chandol wondered if it was all a dream. Only a short time ago, he had been in a different place. Gildon told him to get in. Anson was still wandering around somewhere. The magpie offered him a snack. He accepted. He heard people screaming about a zombie and a vampire. He asked why they were running. The villagers replied that zombies had appeared in Takhansan and that the viceroy had been killed by a vampire. He remembered that he had passed by this town not long ago. He came running back at once. Anson introduced himself as the royal auditor and told the guards to stand back. They stopped him because the palace was full of zombies. They have barricaded the gate, and the zombies are very strong. But he didn't listen to them. He quickly jumped over the wall. After he came down, there were already zombies running towards him. He used the art of defense, Emilet's bell, and after that, he used the art of teaming up with a bird, a turf attack, a magpie's retaliation. He called this magpie Conchi and told her to check the place. He's going to the king's office. But the viceroy appeared in front of him. He saw a zombie for the first time, a shell without a soul. He didn't think he'd ever meet them. He fired off a bow. Afterwards, he easily dodged his punch. The arrow hit him right in the forehead, after which it exploded. The magpie shouted to him that they were coming. Zombies began to approach him. He used the art of the stinging fan. Arrows pierced the zombies. The guards didn't know what was going on inside. Anson said to open the gate. He cleaned out the palace and also asked them to help explore everything. Also have them bring in a sketch artist and witnesses involved in the incident. We need to sketch the perpetrator's face. The artist began to paint. Anson asked if they looked like criminals. Residents said it was definitely them. Anson will report them to the court. He also asked why the artist put ink on the guy's face. The artist replied, because that's what he looks like. Meanwhile, Chandol and Gildon were moving about in a palanquin. Gildon read out about the Maitri temple on Mount Yonaksan. On the day the three Maitri become one, the light will guide you. He said he had not heard of such a mountain, nor had he heard of Chandol. Gildon asked, and how to find it. The note also told them to watch out for smartasses. The guy said maybe they were some special monsters. Gildon asked what he was even talking about and called him a smartass. Chandol replied that he obviously didn't know what they were. Something was heading toward their palanquin. They turned their attention to the man in black. Gildon said the palanquin was a private vehicle, not a cab. He told him to shut up and drive. Gildon asked if he was a hijacker. He was told that he really didn't understand anything. He noticed something. After that, the palanquin took off abruptly. Chandol asked what he was doing. Gildon asked what was following them and what his clothes were. The man in black told him to just shut up and drive. He would reward them handsomely if they got him out of here. There was a monster behind them. He threw fireballs at the palanquin. The man in black said he seemed to be dying. The vehicle seems to be flying. Chandol said it's flying, but he's alive. The monster caught up with them. Fire began to appear from his mouth, which meant that he wanted to attack them. But he just used a headshot. The bird was falling down. The man in black asked how it was possible, since he had killed the queen's bloodhound so easily. They took notice right away. They wanted to ask what he was just talking about, but he passed out. The queen's thread got cut short. She had just lost contact with the monster. The man in black and dreamed about the queen killing his comrades, and they call her a witch. And even the way he dies, he woke up and asked where. Gildon replied that he had killed a bloodhound. The need to run from a demon in broad daylight made life very difficult. The unidentified man asked who they were. Chandol replied that he was the one who broke into their car. He said he couldn't pass out here. The witch could definitely kill them all, and he was spared because she needed to find out where he would run to and who was behind their attack. They're a top-secret organization created by a previous king, but the king died while they were investigating. It turns out that the queen has conspired with a demon to control the young king. But it turned out it wasn't a conspiracy. The queen dowager turned out to be a giant witch. The information they were leaked was a trap. They were trying to get rid of a secret organization. Gildon had heard that thirst was spreading in the palace. Then it was true. The stranger asked how he managed to kill the bloodhound. He called him an extraordinary man and said he could not let his comrades die in vain. Perhaps their meeting was a gift from heaven. As it turned out, it was a girl. She had a request and asked them to help her. She introduced herself as a golden guardian. Her name is Hilda. Gildon asked where she was from. She replied that he was from the Kingdom of the Netherlands and served in the East India Company's Marines. They were on their way to Zipanga when their ship was caught in a storm and was carried to the Joseon coast. All the sailors, including her, were exhausted. They were found by locals. Those men called them Asira and began to bring them into shape, raising and training them for the Joseon army. Soon they became a special battalion. And just like that, she began to love this country as her own and joined the Joseon army. Chung Daeol thinks it's some kind of horrible brainwashing. They were usually sent to spy on strange ones like Ching, Hua, and Ryukyu. Then the king would personally lead their battalion, and giving one of them the title Head of the Golden Guardians. Only the king knew who that title belonged to. But then the king died, and they were assembled to receive a new order. The unknown masked man said that there are many inconsistencies in the sudden death of the king. From then on, they do their best to gather information. They also need to keep a particularly close eye on those who visit and leave the Great Queen's palace, as well as everyone who lives there. Gildon said they then organized an attack on the Queen's palace. He asked what they found inside. She replied that the demon, the queen, is a monstrous witch. They asked how she could fit in the palace if she was a giant. The girl replied that she was usually smaller. She hides her true form. When they broke into the palace, she purposely showed her true form. And Hilda is still trying to figure out the identity of the master. We can assume she'll report back to him with the information she's found. If he finds out that the queen is a giant witch, it doesn't matter how much effort they put in. She's too strong and will act even more cautiously now. Gildon replied that he understood her. He replied that her story was extremely interesting. She asked if he was going to help. He replied that only the royal family can bring the justice that is needed. They have other things to do. Hilda said he wanted to refuse his country's help. Gildon replied that this country is run by the royal family and aristocrats. If their problems are to be solved every time by people from outside, there is no point in their existence. She pointed the sword at his throat. He asked if she was serious. She replied that she could not leave her country so easily. He told her to put the brass down, for he didn't finish the sentence. Chandol tried to calm them down somehow. After all, they didn't have to fight. The guy said that when the time came, they could come and help in the battle with the queen. It's just that they're in a bit of a predicament themselves right now. He also said that he was sure she could do it without them. They really need to find Mount Yonggatsan. She attacked. He asked why she attacked. Hilda asked how they knew about that mountain. She knew they were enemies. Gildon realized she knew where the mountain was. In the royal palace stood the frightened maids. They looked at the one slain among them. They wondered what she wanted. The girls said they didn't know, and to just keep quiet. The queen said she was sure they knew the rules very well. She has said many times what you can do and what you can't do. She asked how many people she has to cut into pieces to get them out of this mess. She doesn't want the king to see this, so she said to get rid of her body. She returned to the throne room. The queen has seen the man she's been looking for. Now all that's left is to find him. She drew his portrait and had it sent out to everyone. And now she has to go to a meeting. The officials said that before they get to the reports from each region, he had something important to say. A letter was delivered to Korolev from the deployed battalion. According to the letter, vampires had been sighted in their area. The queen thought the assassins had failed in their mission. So why does the king seem so confused? And why didn't he investigate the attack? She tried to see who was to blame among the officials. She thinks it's a golden guardian. They said the mother had arrived. The queen told them to wait. She wants to be shown this portrait now. The officials were a bit confused. A portrait was handed to her, and she looked at it carefully. There was a drawing of Han Gildon. She asked who painted it. The official replied that Anson had sent the portrait. The queen ordered the officer to be brought to her at once. Meanwhile, at the vampire's estate, Della finally woke up. She immediately jumped up and was asked if she had slept well, the auditor asked. The girl asked where they were. He replied that this was not his house. From now on, she would live here. Now she can't go outside when the sun is shining. He wants to explain it to her briefly. She asked if this was the afterlife or not. She's in a purple skirt, so they're in the afterlife. He replied that it wasn't exactly like that. He also asked why she was so excited at the thought of them being in another world. The girl answered because Chandol is not here, which means he's alive. A slight and faint smile appeared on the revisor's face. He said to go. He wants her to do something. Hilda used the art of fencing, namely the crossfire. Gildon was telling her to stop because he doesn't want to fight. Gildon doesn't attack innocent people. He used artillery, a headshot. This attack caused a small portion of her hair to burn and fly up the mountain. She yelled that he was saying he didn't want to fight. He replied that his fighting spirit had been activated. He hadn't noticed it and had overdone it a bit. But Hilda said he even said the name of the technique. Chandol told them to wait and not to fight. He suggested they talk it over. The girl replied that he was pretending to talk her out of it, and then he would definitely attack. He blocked her blow and told her to calm down, but then his mask activated. He was starting to look a little bit like the same monster. Chandol used Pyeonggong, a whirlwind. Gildon watched this with amazement. The girl was thrown back. After that, he used necromancy strikes. The girl said she had heard of it. If you wear it on your head, this mask can give you the power of a goblin. There's a malicious power to it. She asked where he got it from. Hilda said they were very convincing and she understood. The misunderstanding was cleared up, and she suggested we talk. Chandol said why should they talk when he could swat her with one punch? His weapon swept right in front of her eyes. She fell. Chandol said that was cool. He asked if there was anyone else who wanted to be a good friend. He needs to punch someone. Gildon said it's a real goblin. The girl found herself in a white room. Gildon came to her. She asked where they were. He welcomed her here and told her it was an empty room. She asked if this room was monochromatic, even without a proper background. He replied that this space is for when you need to speak briefly. He held out his hand and said to take it. They won't have to engage in useless chit-chat. That way, they'll reach an understanding faster. She took his hand. He told her everything. She replied that she understood. He asked if she would tell him where Mount Yonggatsan was. Gildon is going there. The girl replied that she had only heard of it, but had never been there. He asked if she even knew where it was. The girl replied that this mountain is not really a mountain, it's an island. It's an island in the East Sea, but it's called Yonggatsan because it looks like a mountain. There's someone in Hasla Harbor who knows how to get there. She doesn't know who. Gildon asked why she freaked out when she heard the name if she knew so little. The girl replied that she couldn't go back to headquarters even though it was an order. He called for a palanquin. Meanwhile, Anson was being tested before being let in for an audience with the queen. He was led through the hallway by men in green robes, whereupon he now sat in the hall and bowed to the queen. He said Anson is here, and he was summoned by the Great Mother. The queen said she had seen the portrait he had sent. She ordered him to give a detailed account of all the circumstances of the case. After the order, he told everything. She replied that he did a good job and thanked him. He pleases her eye, young, energetic, calm, and loyal. She'll ask him a question. She asked if he wanted to serve her. He replied that he was ashamed that she had to ask such a question. After all, he is a loyal subject of this court and this country, so he is already serving the Great Mother. The woman laughed and said she was starting to like him more and more. She told him to take it. It was a plaque that confirms he speaks for her. The Queen Dowager told him to feel free to use it. Now he has to complete the search for Hong Gildong. It wants to be the first to receive any of his reports. Anson replied that he understood her. He came out of the palace. Further events take place in Hasla. Hilda, Chandel, and Gildon were on the portage. They noticed the place was lively. Hilda suggested waiting for the night at this tavern, because ships will come into port at night. They carry contraband, breaking the laws of the land. They know all the routes on the East Sea. They'll catch them in the act and demand help in exchange for silence. Night has fallen. Just as the girl said, a ship appeared. One boat has snuck in, unloading goods with no lights on. They look nervous. Gildon offered to go to their place, but the girl told him to wait. He asked why. Hilda told him to look at their cargo. There were small children sitting in the cage. Chandel said there are children in those cages. He asked if they use them for anything. Either way, they should rescue them as soon as possible. But Gildon told him to wait, because it's an injustice. Chandel asked if saving the children was an injustice. The man replied that they were unloading the cages from the boat. A buyer should be arriving soon. The guilt of these people is obvious, but first they need to find out the identity of the hirers, and then they will catch them all at once. They need to wait for the right time. Hilda asked if he was sure. There were already a lot of guards here, and with more to come, they might not be able to cope. They need to leave as quickly as possible and leave no trace. She asked why don't they save the children now and then go to Mount Yongasan to complete the mission. Gildon replied that she shouldn't worry, because no matter how many of them came to Gildon, they would all die. She told him not to make a monster of himself. Besides, if they follow the plan, the next day the port will be dazed. That's bad, because they'll be stuck here. Chandel turned his attention to the dock. Looks like he's talking to the kids. This man must be in charge. Hilda said to calm down and wait here to hear what he's talking about. Whoever he is, he won't harm the goods. They can't make any rash decisions, because their mission is too important. But as soon as she turned in their direction, they were gone. The man said he was picking up. His master would be pleased and gave the slave trader the money. The man in the white suit thanked him. He handed him the pouch. But then Gildon intercepted him. He said this money looks like payment for the kids. He'll give him 20 seconds to explain. The man asked who he was. He also asked how he dared to tread on his berth and what he had forgotten here. At his shout, other people came. He ordered the port closed and no one allowed in. 2 men stood in front of the harbor entrance. But Hilda killed them. She yelled that it was even too easy, and she wouldn't let anyone out then. Other people said they were together and should be killed. He dodged their attacks, and his justice scale began to decrease. He noticed it was a martial artist. The man shouted for them to give him a break. His fairness scale was filled and his first fairness skill became available to him. An encouraging tune, give a beat. He punched the man's face in different directions. After that, others began to fall into the water. The other man asked how dare he. He's thrown a punch at Gildon, but he's dodged it. His palm slapped the man's face. He started beating him the same way he had beaten those people. After that, he discarded it. People started to fuss and realized it was time for them to leave. But then Chandel appeared. He said they can't escape. They had to surrender. Gildon walked up to them. He said to release the children and tell him where, when, why, and how they caught them. The man started to mumble something, to which Gildon replied that his justice scale was starting to fill up again. Someone yelled, "Wait!" An important man with guards came and asked what was going on here. The customers bowed to him and said they were sorry. He replied that they had a slight misunderstanding. Gildon asked what misunderstanding he was referring to. The guard asked if he was sure. The man replied that they should settle the misunderstanding. Chandel and Hilda didn't understand what he was talking about. A man sprinkled some kind of powder on the children. After that, they turned into monsters. The man said he didn't know if they noticed, but these kids didn't make any noise. Because they're not human. They're mermaids. Meanwhile, the auditor and Dele were going up somewhere. He told her to be careful and follow him. They made it. A red slurry dripped off the rocks. The girl asked what it was. He said it was lava, simply put, molten rock. He said he couldn't touch the thing she was holding, so he thanked her for her help. The revisor told her not to forget that such a place existed. Now they must go. Della asked where they would go now. He replied that to Hasla. The man led them to an underground passage. They began to descend. This man's name is Jong Yul. He's the leader of the Yulpo Sandan here in Hasla. He doesn't want to brag, but they are the best company in Gangwon province. What he is about to show them now concerns the fate of the people in this city. He asked me to keep it a secret. The torch fell down, and then a bunch of mermaids showed up. Shandal said it was hard to meet even one fairy creature, and there was a whole crowd. He asked how that was possible. Gildon spoke to Jong Yul and asked what the mermaids had to do with the fate of the town. The man replied that it was all about that. It was mermaid oil. There are records of mermaid oil being used in the inexhaustible lamps of Qing Shi Huan's tomb. It is a very valuable oil of wide use. Even yawns are sold for a great price. That's when he got a shout from a subordinate about them putting out the lights. They put out the lights and quickly hid. Other people showed up. An unidentified man said there was a report. He ordered other people to search everything. It was the Viceroy's guards. As Jong Yul said, mermaid oil costs a lot of money, and the local Viceroy wants to get involved in big politics. That's why he needs money. The big game always needs money. Shandal immediately remembered the very same Viceroy. He really hopes Delhi is okay. At first, the Viceroy used the fishermen to catch whales and harvest their fat. But one day, a mermaid got caught in his nets. And then he goes crazy. He uses terrible methods to catch mermaids. Gildon asked what methods we are talking about. Jong Yul replied that they catch baby mermaids and tie them to the ship. The mermaid mothers come to rescue the cubs themselves, and then they're harpooned. It's a method that stopped being used a long time ago, and since mermaids belong to the Dragon King's family, his wrath might fall on them if you catch a mermaid in such a way. The storms are relentless, and Hasla becomes a rundown fishing village. So he caught the mermaids and disguised them, hiding them from the eyes of the Viceroy's servants, to take them to a distant island and release them into the sea. That means he knows how to catch a baby mermaid. However, it is a method that only his family knows. It is passed down from generation to generation. They can't let the rest of the people know about it. Shandal wonders why he's telling his secret. Maybe there's something he doesn't understand. Gildon asked why he was telling them everything. Shandal confirmed his words. The guard handed his master a scroll. It was a scroll with Gildon's image on it. Hilda and Shandal immediately got ready. Jong Yul said these posters have not yet arrived at the state office. In his work, timely information is invaluable. Besides, he had heard good things about Hong Gildong. He trusts him, and he wants to ask a favor. Shandal remembered something. He recognized the face of the very same auditor. The guard said a ship docked at the pier at dawn. There's a reward for accurate information about it. Also, if anyone reports any suspicious activities of Yulpo, a larger reward will await them. They said even the smallest detail would help preserve law and order. People were talking amongst themselves, asking where they came from, and don't they know who feeds Hasla? If they send an official, let him be a normal person, or at least someone who understands the situation. As it turned out, the Viceroy is just trying to get more money, and the company can't do anything about it. An auditor came up to them and asked what they were talking about. The man realized the vampire was out of town. The woman said that Yulpo's company ran a lot of things, and the new Viceroy was trying to squeeze more money out of them. After all, it is thanks to Yulpo that merchant ships regularly enter their port, and their stalls are stocked with goods. They also take in orphans and raise them until they grow up. Yulpo Sandan Company owns the local orphanage, so there are no homeless people in town. The company has a lot of money, but they are in no hurry to fill the Viceroy's pockets with it because of his antagonism towards Yulpo. Meanwhile, back at the manor, Dele was cleaning up. She did the job diligently. But then the peddler knocked. Del came out and asked who it was. She also said there was no old man here. This merchant's name is Enul. He trades in the underworld. Enul said that he was pleased to know that he would have a lot of work in the future. The girl replied that, then, he was the one who brought the orders. He was amused, for the girl was not frightened when she saw him. Della asked, wondering what she had to be scared of. She's already died, so she can't die again. She also asked what money looks like in the underworld. Enul replied that if not today, soon she would be seeing them all the time. The girl asked if the vampire was a good one, and what he did for a living. She was very curious. She asked for a clue. The merchant replied that his work deals with souls. Enul does business with a man who buys evil demonic souls. They will appear once they find where the human soul resides. Jong Yul said he had a request for them. He asks to take these mermaids to safety and free them. Gildon wondered if it wouldn't be easier to drive them himself. He didn't need to bring in outside people. Jong Yul replied that when he returns, he will have a long talk with the viceroy. Everything he does will be investigated, and his men will be watched. It will take a long time for the surveillance to wear off. But mermaids can't live that long in captivity, so we need to release them into the sea as soon as possible. If they can do that, he might have a suitable reward. Jong Yul knows it's a difficult decision, so he suggests they take some time to rest and think things over. His subordinate said that the soldiers are blocking the port, so Jong Yul needs to go. Gildon told him to wait. He asked if Jong Yul knew where Matt Yonakson was. He stopped. Jong Yul asked who told him about this mountain. Anyway, that's where they can release the mermaids. Shandol and Gildon sat outside the house. Shandol asked him if he had eaten. After all, the hospitality of the richest merchants in Gangwon is something excellent. Shandol asked what Gildon was looking at. Gildon answered, "To an 8-pointed bell. It senses demons and monsters nearby and rings for their presence. But he didn't make a sound yesterday. That means there were no monsters near them." Shandol said that mermaids are monsters. Gildon replied that mermaids were among the natural creatures of their world. But if humans harm them, they may attack. Shandol asked if what Jong Yul said was true. Gildon said justice is building up in his heart. From somewhere in Hasla, justice calls to him. He needs to find true justice. As it turns out, Hilda was missing somewhere. The girl watched the sea. The sea stretched all the way to her homeland. She asked to take her heart to where her home was. The girl wanted to sing something in her native language, which she did. After that, she went to a clothing store whose name was written in her native language. They probably thought it would attract more customers. She wore this uniform during the Great War. She could be recognized by it, which is why she should change. A girl walked into the store and said she was looking for something similar. A salesman approached her. She was very surprised when she heard the price of 100 yangs. She said it was obvious that she was Qing. She argued with the seller because he wanted to give her a handicraft just because she was a foreigner. The seller told her to leave if she wasn't going to buy anything. He yelled at her to go to Choi, who lives under the bridge. After all, a poor woman like her should only wear her clothes. She thanked him for the information and called him a jerk. She was walking down a not very prosperous street. Afterwards, she saw a woman under the bridge. She spoke to her and said she was here to order clothes, but it was as if the woman wasn't listening to her. Just then, she heard a voice asking what she was doing and why she wanted this woman. The boy said that she used to be a very talented seamstress. He, her mother and father went out to sea on a boat, and the boat suddenly sank. They survived, but her father did not. The woman went crazy, so now she's sitting here sewing these rags. Hilda asked if they were related. The boy replied that she was his mother. Many people died in the crash. The rest of the children, having lost their parents, went to the Yulpo orphanage. All the youth that grew up there are already working without having to take an exam. All the food at the shelter is good, and there are lots of places to play. They even help with studying. After his father died in the wreck, his mother took him out of there, came to the gate and made a scene, and now they live by begging. If the woman took it, at least let her answer when spoken to. The boy shouted that she couldn't even get a word in edgewise. If she was going to keep quiet and sit here, he would go to the Yulpo shelter himself. The woman noticed this and started making some noises. She started to stop him, but the boy ran away anyway. He ran over to an establishment where food was being prepared. After that, he went back to his mom's. The boy brought food for her. Hilda came in and he asked what she needed. She brought food for them. She told her and her mom to have dinner. Sea storms can be terrible. Not everyone can survive such a nightmare without consequences. So don't let the boy push her around. He must realize that she doesn't want to lose her son. The boy called the girl too talkative, for she knows nothing. He came to see the sea. He can't take it anymore. He's going to the orphanage himself, namely tomorrow, when the sun rises. But the boy realized that he was not alone here. It was Jong Yul, whom he called Yeoman. He remembered a boy named Sung-gu. He couldn't believe the petty officer remembered him. He was honored to meet him. The girl who was next to the petty officer asked what he was doing here. It's nighttime. He replied that he just couldn't sleep, so he decided to walk along the beach and get some fresh air. But he asked what the girl, whom he called Minnow, was doing here. She replied that she sometimes went out for a walk with the foreman. This girl's father also died and the foreman takes care of her. Now she wears such nice clothes and goes out for walks with him. Jong Yul said it was late and it wasn't safe to walk alone. He sent him home, but the boy told him to wait. He asked if he could take him to the shelter. He wants to live there. The man replied that he couldn't do that. If his mother is against it, he cannot accept it, no matter how much he would like to. The boy thinks it would be better if his mom didn't exist. Hilda was coming back. She had noticed that it was so crowded during the day, but now there was no one around. She spotted someone. This stranger said her name. She immediately readied her weapon and thought it was a monster who knew her name. Or worse, a bloodhound. But it was Gildon. Some old lady clung to him. The girl asked who was on his back. Gildon said they were at the docks, and Chandol was called by an old lady. She asked for help, for her strength was failing. Chandol agreed and said no problem. He tried to lift it, but it failed. He wonders why it's so heavy. He can't lift it. Gildon called it a disgrace and said he could handle it one-handed. He told the boy to stay out of the way, but even he noticed that it was so heavy he couldn't lift it. But he's Hong Gildon. He is justice. The old lady noticed it, and she climbed on his back. Gildon said to get off him. She replied that she had finally found such an energetic man. She told him to forget about this nonsense and help her find something. She could really use his help. If he helps her out, he will be blessed. She asked if he would refuse to help her infirm grandmother. He asked what she was looking for. Grandma replied that she was looking for a blue turtle. She can't walk, so she rides her horse and fishes for a living. But last night, someone kidnapped her. The only place to sell a turtle that big is the Hasla fish market. It must be kept there somewhere. She asked me to find it because it wasn't just an animal, it was her family. Gildon said he'd find her, and now she had to go downstairs. Replied that if she came down, he would turn into a rabbit. Gildon asked what this nonsense was, and told Chandol to take it down. But he didn't succeed. Hilda asked, so he carried her all over the fish market. He replied that all day and asked where she had been. They shook hands again. They could have solved this from the beginning with the monochrome room. Now Gildon knows what the girl was doing, and where she was. Hilda suggested, asking Jong-yul if they hadn't found the turtle yet. A blue turtle big enough to carry a man must be worth a pretty penny. Such a rarity must have gone straight to him. The old lady said what an interesting man. They came to his estate. The guard said it's late. If they wanted to meet the master, let them come tomorrow morning. They asked for forgiveness. But then they saw Jong-yul with the kids. It was the petty officer. Gildon asked where he was coming from so late, and even more so with lots of kids. Hilda said the foreman was raising orphans, and they must be kids from the orphanage. He seems like a man who really loves his job, and he's pretty good with kids too. Told me to go back to the hotel and come back tomorrow, but they stopped immediately. Their faces expressed as if they had realized some important fact. Hilda said it couldn't be. Gildon asked if she was thinking the same thing he was. What if he doesn't turn mermaids into children, but instead turns orphans into mermaids? They need to check out the place where they hid the mermaids. On those nights when the moon is bright, Minnow always crosses to the shore. When she grows up, she wants to learn to sail. On this cliff, they practice navigating with a compass and stars. Sungo knew they were learning to sail. He dreams of a future where he doesn't have to wear rags, but he lives with his mom in a slum. He can't believe he has to go out on the street and beg for food. He can't take it. But a box appeared in front of his feet. He saw something that sailors usually use. He thinks maybe someone lost it. It's a useful thing and could come in handy at the shelter. A man asked if everything was okay. The security guard replied that yes, the guard was making his rounds. But someone appeared behind him. He spotted him immediately and drew his weapon. It was Gildon. He used the magic arts, a room of utter devastation. The guard didn't get it. There were many similar women before his eyes. He wonders where he is, and where all these girls came from. He can't believe he's seeing a dance like this. He had always dreamed of becoming a professional dancer, and Gildon fulfilled his dream. He was already lying, almost undressed. Gildon said that the Room of Utter Desolation is a magical art that allows a person to fulfill their most secret desire. Chandol asked if he wasn't the one who immersed him with his wish. Gildon told him to just search it. Chandol found the pouch. Hilda said she felt sorry for the guy. She asked if he couldn't have dealt with him differently. Gildon replied that a real hero had to use the safest methods. They tested the powder on the mermaid, but it didn't turn. They were surprised, for they thought it was the same powder. Chandol said that maybe he was turning a human into a mermaid, not the other way around. Hilda replied that, if that was the case, she suggested that they shouldn't shake him unnecessarily. A voice was heard that said it was true. It was Jong-yul who said that the boy had gotten it right. Jong-yul said that if it's a powder that turns people into mermaids, then obviously it wouldn't work on a mermaid. He will show you how to use these powders properly. The knots on the pouches are different. One has a twisted knot, the other a flat knot. His guard drew his sword. He pierced a starfish with it. Now they had to sprinkle this with powder from a bag with a twisted knot. Chandol did it. The starfish turned into a human. Jong-yul said to now sprinkle powder from the other bag. Starfish has returned to its original appearance. Young Yul said that the bag with the twisted knot contains a powder that transforms any creature into a human being. The bag with the flat knot contains a restorative powder that returns the creature to its original form. He's leaving these bags to them. Now it's up to them to use them or not. He had planned to give them at the first meeting, but couldn't due to a variety of unpleasant circumstances. He is glad they are finally getting this sorted out. The man asked if they had any other questions. Hilda said that his orphanage was somehow too full of orphans. He agreed. And above all, seafaring is very dangerous. Very many ships do not return because of terrible storms at sea. So he decided to take care of every child that he couldn't return to his home. By helping those in need, he is investing in the future. In addition to storms, there are pirates, illegal cargo ships, and more. There are many risks in his business, but that's when kindness returns. Even if someone attacks the ship, the friends will protect not only the ship, but the cargo as well. They will not abandon them. Such ties have been passed down in his company from generation to generation, and the shelter helps strengthen them. These mermaids he will take to the sea and set free. Gildon thanked him. Jong Yul said that there was nothing to thank him for. He would also need their help so they could get to Mount Yongsan. He offered to keep it a secret, even from the merchants. Something alerted Chandel. Gildon explained that, in case he was wondering, he had met this grandmother at the market. Chandel asked what that was even about. The man said she was looking for a big blue turtle. Maybe Young Yul knows where to find it. He said he would have his men look for her. They would try to find her as soon as possible. Meanwhile, at the Viceroy's, he received a report of a group of people in strange clothing. Among them was a dark-skinned man. The Viceroy repeated his words about the dark-skinned man. He said that they would definitely cause trouble and ordered him to find them. If he saw anything suspicious, have them bring them to him at once. The Yulpo merchants must be up to something. A guard came running to the Viceroy. He said an inspection had come. A secret agent had arrived to conduct the inspection. The revisor stared at the Viceroy in silence. The Viceroy's subordinate asked not to be biased against him. This adds plus 110 to the bias level. He ordered all the papers and ledgers to be brought in. They shouldn't keep anything from him. He told them to get everything out of the vault quickly. The auditor sat down to check everything out. While all the paperwork's in order, there was no problem there. He wanted to check out the prison. And the Viceroy said there are some complications with the prison. The auditor asked what he was talking about. He wants to know if any prisoners are being treated unfairly. This added plus 20 to the bias level. The Viceroy said that there are no criminals in the prison at the moment, but there is a witness they need to protect. He is very distrustful, and when he sees a stranger, he gets hysterical. The reviewer asked what crime he was investigating. The vicar replied that it was a case of missing children, and he was a key witness. The guard said the head wasn't here right now, and even if he was, he wouldn't be able to meet him. Sungu asked if Minnow was here. He has something to tell her. The guard asked who it was, and the other guard reminded him of the incident with the dog. The one replied that she and her head were practicing sailing. They would not be back soon. He had better come some other time. The boy replied that it was good. He looked at the practice of seafaring. He's so jealous. Under the pretext of meeting Minnow, he was going to ask the head to allow him to return. It was seafaring practice with the head himself. He would have given anything for such a life. He remembered something, namely the place where he met the head and Minnow. He thinks maybe seafaring practice takes place there. If he finds them there, maybe he'll have a chance. He wandered around all day, but still couldn't find them. He noticed the mooring mark, and there are friction marks on the edge of the cliff. Maybe they tied it here and came down. Come to think of it, that time he saw people on the edge of the cliff. Maybe they came down the cliff from here. It's a low-profile place, so they must have a meeting place there. If he can find this secret meeting place, the chapter will see him in a different light, but he can't anymore, and his arms are getting weaker. He doesn't know where they went down. He can't even see the way up anymore. There's nowhere to step. He wanted someone to help him, but then he saw a huge rift between the rocks. If you don't go down the cliff, you can't see it. He can't believe there's such a giant gap inside the cliff. He heard something abruptly, after which he hid behind some rocks. He saw people in some sort of manufacturing facility. The man was telling the next one to come down. The mermaid flew down. There was shouting. It made butter. The boy realized it was a mermaid oil factory. He has to get out before they find him. But then he saw a multitude of stairs. There were tears in the mermaid's eyes. The mermaids were crying. He didn't want to be looked at like that. He couldn't help it. He needs to hurry. But he noticed something. He saw a mermaid very much like his friend. It was probably Minnow. Gildon asked if they are shipping out tomorrow night. Chandel replied that the journey would take about 4 days, and all they need to do is to come here at midnight and set off in a prepared boat. Gildon turned to his grandmother. He asked her to let him go, for he was not going to go with her. She told him to just find her turtle before departure. Hilda replied that the head of Yulpo would help her, he just needed time. They heard shouting. Someone said they didn't like it either. The viceroy leaves them no choice. The man said that if they check the refrigerator and the meat is not fresh, who will take responsibility? They need to do business, and the taxes have become exorbitant. The governor wants everything searched, every aquarium. They are making a fuss because they are trying to find an unknown species of fish. There's nothing on the premises. The village is a mess. Granny said they should go to the clerk's office because she needed to see it. Gildon told her to cut it out and come clean. If she didn't tell him exactly what she was looking for, he wouldn't help. He told her to spill everything. If she doesn't want to, their paths will part here. Granny told him to wait, and she would tell him everything. She's actually the princess of the Sea Palace. Her general came here to investigate the latest incident between land and sea, but was never heard from again. Gildon was shocked and said that there seemed to be a big crisis in the palace. Chandol told him to be careful. The missing person was Quan Chubu, the head of the Sea Kingdom's army. He was conducting an investigation on land. It concerned the multiple disappearances of mermaids. A subordinate came to see Choi Yul. He said the guests insist that their departure be moved to tonight. He asked what to do. The man replied that he did not know if the drug had worked. He wonders if they noticed something. There shouldn't be a problem if they bring the shipment. And also the subordinate said there is information from the state office. The royal auditor has arrived at the department. They say he is now investigating a case of official theft. The man replied that, in fact, that was even a good thing. He said they will ship them tonight as they want them. The witness asked what kind of nonsense he was talking about. Does he look like a free man? But they all turned their eyes back, because someone broke through the doors. It was Gildon. He said it was already a sunny day, but it was getting brighter, because Hong Gildon has arrived. The merchant said that all things are divided into yin and yang, even souls. In their world, each type of creature has its own energy. Yin comes from demons. Yang comes from humans. They are perfectly balanced. The girl asked what they were for. He answered her not to worry, for they were getting to that point. He asked her to get some water. The girl replied a second. He says it's weird, very weird. He has a bad feeling. He hopes nothing bad will happen. Gildon said they would not keep a royal officer here. The viceroy shouted about how dare they so brazenly barge in here. As head, he orders them to stop all this.
But the viceroy fell abruptly silent.
They started murmuring something amongst themselves, and he was telling them not to ignore them. Meanwhile, the level of bias had risen to 100%. Then the auditor spoke. They dared to come here without even a hint of a plan. Chandol asked if he was the same scientist. The revisor remembered them too. He remembered Gildon. Gildon said they were going to take him away in the name of justice. Such a corrupt official has no right to stand in front of Gildon. The man used the art of the uplifting song, join in on the beat. But then the auditor came upon him. The situation is escalating. The revisor told Gildon not to test him and called him a thief. Gildon didn't get it. His amulet began to glow. He realized it was a demon and punched it. The reviewer flew off. Chandol yelled at Gildon. Gildon said his bell ringer reacted to him, but then it stopped glowing. The royal auditor was run up to. The general said he doesn't understand what's going on here at all. It's a mess. Gildon asked. His name is Quan. The princess of the Dragon Court is looking for him. The general could not believe that the princess had arrived on land. He replied that yes, and she is really looking for him. They should go. Young Yul has arrived. He asked what happened here. The guards replied that some dark-skinned guy with an eye patch and a kid who looked like a street performer had just broken into the administration office. They broke down the gate and took the prisoner. They also wounded the royal auditor. He closed his hands dramatically. He was laughing. He can't even keep his face. He didn't realize they were that stupid. He needs to calm down and try to resolve the situation. He asked where the viceroy was, and the viceroy asked if there was any news from the pursuit team. Where they are now. He can't believe the royal auditor was murdered. And by the Eastern Directorate. He ordered to mobilize all armed forces from every division and find them. The man asked what was going on here. The viceroy replied that he had no time for the head of the Yulpo right now. They would talk about everything later. Zhang Yul said he heard some news on the way here. If the royal auditor was killed, the law says that the viceroy will receive a big penalty. If that happens, the whole province will be a disaster. His small band of merchants will help track them down. The viceroy said it would help a lot. The head of Yulpo replied that he was just doing his duty. However, he hoped it would solve some of their misunderstandings. A guard ran in. The viceroy asked what had happened. The guard handed over a letter from Wegimbu. According to him, he was the one who attacked the officials. It was Hong Gildon. The Viceroy has ordered a lockdown of the port and its environs. He will write an order to stop all port activities. He said the Yulpo chapter can go now and thanked them for their support. There was also something else given to the Viceroy. It contains information about the most wanted man. There was a royal auditor in the image. The Viceroy didn't know what was going on or why he was on the wanted list. But the corpse was gone. People gathered near the port. They were told that the port was closed and that all ships were forbidden to enter or leave. Zhang Yul was going to send the dark-skinned guy in the boat with the mermaids. But now, he's considered a criminal. Since the port is closed, the chapter will have to allocate him a merchant ship. He says they've prepared a ship for him. The mermaids are already on board, so he asked Gildon to hurry up and leave. There he stood in the tree. Gildon asked if he was sure everyone was loaded. He thinks there is an oversight. The man asked what he meant. Did he really think the head had broken the treaty? Gildon replied that it's not about the contract. He is just trying to protect it. His mermaid oil business is over, because real justice starts here. The boy was telling her to hold on, he would save her. He released her and spoke faster. There were no steps ahead. There are only stairs like this here. Perhaps it was to prevent the mermaids from escaping. He told her to get on her back. But then the guards appeared at the sound and said that the mermaid had gotten out. He told her to hurry, but her tears were flowing. He won't leave her. They have to run no matter what. Because he saw what they do to mermaids there. But a huge guard appeared in their path. He asked, and what did the boy see? Sung Gu says he didn't see anything, and he won't tell anyone. He apologized. His mother was restlessly walking around looking for him. She saw that he was not in his usual place. She immediately moved to run. Zhang Yul asked what he was talking about. He was checking the holds himself. There is nothing wrong with the mermaids. Gildon replied that there was no problem with the mermaids themselves. The problem is the number of them. The total number of missing mermaids is 80. Shandol beckoned to him. They said there were only 32 mermaids on board. The head said he was clearly being lied to. He doesn't know where Gildon heard that there were 80 missing mermaids. The man replied that he heard it from the Sea Palace. A subordinate wanted to run up to him, but others asked what he was doing. After all, he is busy. He relayed that another cave with mermaids had been found. Their team was followed. He remembered the elderly woman who clung like a tick. Gildon replied that it was none of his business. He asked how many mermaids were hidden in the cave he had hidden from them. Zhang Yul replied that 5 is for oil production. He'll give up the rest. Gildon said that he asked him to take the mermaids and release them. But in reality, Zhang Yul knew that an investigation had been launched, not into the Viceroy's affairs, but into Yulpo's company. He just wanted to get rid of the evidence, using them because they're outsiders. Zhang Yul said he was sorry. He asked if Gildon could help him meet with the Dragon Palace ambassador. He would like to apologize and offer compensation. Gildon said it was the right decision. He would go to sea with them. His subordinates said he couldn't go, it could be dangerous. But he told them to shut up. It's a problem he has to fix. If nothing is done about it, the merchants will fail. He has to solve everything and protect the merchants. He was bowed down by his subordinates. He and Gildon left. Hilda said General Quan was right. There's a hidden cave here. He told her to open the passageway. She used a cross punch. The mermaids began to swim out. The general thanked her for saving him. He asked why they are working with Yulpo. Hilda replied that it was because of Mount Yonggak-san. And the general asked, they asked the merchants to take them to the mountain. He handed his helmet to her and told them to hang his helmet on the bow of the ship. Hilda asked if he was sure he was a turtle and not an octopus. He replied that the servants of the Sea Palace did not grow hair. Gildon said there was no need to tie up Zhang Yul. The head asked that he do as he says. He is going to apologize and should be tied to the mast. He did it since the head wanted it himself. Hilda's back. She said that all the mermaids trapped in the cave were freed, and General Quan took them out to sea. Gildon said these were the only ones left. He asked the head if they were going the right way. Zhang Yul asked to see the compass. Gildon asked if he was pointing to Mount An. Zhang Yul replied that it was the right direction. They just need to maintain their course. Hilda leaned over to the mermaids, saying that freedom was just around the corner, but she noticed something. Shandol also immediately noticed something else. Other ships were heading straight for them as well. Ships were blocking their way. It was the Viceroy. He said that the message of the Yulpo traders proved to be true. Bandits have stolen the ship and are trying to escape. The Viceroy said he would convince them to surrender. The Viceroy asked if that seemed strange. The fact that the merchants sent a message like this. Zhang Yul is a cunning man. He might have ulterior motives. He ordered a close approach to their ship. The Viceroy said they can't escape. They could barely steer the ship. They were told to drop anchor and surrender. Gildon said that this ship was provided by Zhang Yul. This voyage isn't for crooks like them, so they shouldn't get in the way. Chandol said they're from Hasla. The viceroy said they didn't need to lie. The merchants had already reported on their actions. They turned their attention to the mast. They didn't understand why he was there. Chandol asked when he had time to tie it there. Gildon replied that it wasn't him. They told the viceroy that it was just a misunderstanding. They didn't understand what was going on at all. Hilda came running over to Gildon. She said it's not mermaids in the cabin, they're children. They've been duped. That's when they heard the laughter of the head of Yulpo. Zhang Yul said that the viceroy brought warships with him. He asked if they wanted to surrender and get their pads. The ship jerked sharply. The viceroy shouted to fire cannons at them, which they did on his orders. The cannonballs flew into the mast. The mast is off and the ship is spinning in place, and you can still hear the head laughing. Zhang Yul said that the warships on the port side, they wouldn't be able to escape from the sailors that sent countless ships to the Dragon King. The other ships opened fire again. Their ship began to disintegrate due to the many nukes. Chandol said they're shelling them with artillery. They can't hold out much longer. Gildon said his fairness score isn't going up. That means they're not evil. Whatever happens, if he attacks people, he becomes a villain. Such is the fate of those who wear that heroic mask. It was the first time Chandol had seen him like this. The viceroy was telling them in a no-nonsense way. Gildon used an artillery spear. His shot went straight at the viceroy. Chandol didn't realize what he was doing. Gildon said they blew up the flagship of an ungodly, corrupt official. They thieves have guns too, but they continued to fire. Hilda said they were finished. Her stomach couldn't take it anymore. She remembered the general's words about his helmet, and that it should be hung at the front of the ship. The Crescent Moon Squad was already preparing to salvo again. Zhang Yul was still laughing. After all, they want to get a cannonball instead of pads. They need to get the kids out of here. But he noticed that the transformation was dissipating, and they were returning to their human form. If the ship sinks now, they're finished. He was yelling for them not to shoot. There are children on board. Zhang Yul said he wasn't sure if they could swim. It'll be interesting to find out. If those responsible for the disappearance of the children are taken to Hasla's beach with the bodies of the children, and if he tells them that he barely survived and tells them everything, it will be funny for him. Gildon replied that this wasn't the first time Zhang Yul had pulled something like this. He was still laughing. Zhang Yul asked, "And he means first. It's just wonderful for him." The guards shouted that the viceroy had fallen into the sea and must be pulled out. They're ready to shoot. Well, something incredible happened that put people on edge. They were the underwater inhabitants. People have been asking what it is. It can't be. They had only heard legends of the Dragon Kingdom. The woman was telling them to stop. They are the dolphin cavalry of the Dragon Palace. She was telling them to send a representative to negotiate with their commander-in-chief. The viceroy was out of condition, and he thought he was dead, for there was talk of a Dragon Kingdom palace. The woman told Gildon not to worry. She'll do it. He asked who she was. It's the first time he's seen her. The girl replied that she was the princess of the Dragon Palace. Her name is Heron. She said she wanted the captain of this ship. She's the princess of the Dragon Sea and she has something to say. The viceroy couldn't believe that the Dragon Sea princess wanted to see him. She asked if he was the commander of this ship. The viceroy replied that it was he. He introduced himself as the viceroy of Hasla, So Moon. She wanted to say something to him, but she was interrupted. The assistant viceroy spoke up and asked why. He said the viceroy said they shouldn't discriminate or judge people based on their race, gender, or anything else. Judging and discriminating against people is the real ugliness. Everyone has freedom. But the viceroy called him Pulyash. He asked why he was called Puffy. He doesn't care how much they work or how honest they are. Everyone criticizes him and rejects him for that reason alone. It's like he doesn't mean anything. The viceroy told him to stop. They need to find out what's going on here first. The people said to put your hand over your heart, here, where the viceroy can see, and tell him to stop talking. The princess replied that she hadn't said anything yet. She just needed to talk to Gildon. She was told that he helped solve the mermaid disappearance case, and that the whole scheme was run by Zhang Yul, who used the mermaids to make oil. If you scrutinize everything, there's a lot of evidence against him, so they're asking the viceroy to look into it. They need his wise judgment on the fate of this criminal. Zhang Yul shouted to the viceroy. He told him to check the hold. That's where he'll find the missing children. They've been infected and turned into mermaids. Hilda said he deliberately sailed with them to trap them, a boy she met at the harbor. He said they turned the missing children into mermaids. The viceroy cried out what genius could have done this. He talked about what happened to the missing kids. He was yelling for them all to be locked up. A smile appeared on Zhang Yul's face. The princess stopped him and asked if he hadn't heard her. The viceroy replied that these are land matters. Even if the suspect is at sea, he has come sushi. Therefore, the Dragon Sea Princess has no right to interfere in this situation. He told her to leave. Chandol said it was all a misunderstanding. They didn't do anything wrong. It's all Yungyul's fault. He said, why don't they look for the bodies? A mountain cave not far from where they turned people into mermaids. The princess said it was true. She witnessed it. The viceroy said he was a most wanted man. He broke into the prison and even shot the royal auditor. But here, even the princess was shocked. Hilda said she couldn't take it anymore. They can't even prove their innocence. The only way to get to Mount Yongguksan is to go through them. Gildon shouted at the viceroy to watch then what he was saying. He asked if he was even the viceroy. Chandol apologized and said he didn't think Gildon understood. His goal is to take control of this land and prevent the reincarnation of the Demon King. When a serious problem comes up, he'll think of it like a piece of a puzzle. And if he has thought about it for even a second, he will immediately realize that the problem is right in front of him. A bat was watching them. Gildon said all he knows is that he's behind it all. Maybe he needs to take a closer look. But they didn't listen to him and started firing. The princess used dragon sea art. High waves. The viceroy's ship was shaking too much. They won't be able to reload the cannons. The princess told Gildon she'd look into it. And they need to leave quickly. She ordered the dolphin dragoons to open the way of the Dragon Sea. They caused a maelstrom. Gildon thanked her and said he would give her a criminal in return. But then he noticed something. The ship was cut in half. It was Yungyul. He said, do they really think they have him in their hands? Everything was going according to his plan. He didn't expect the Dragon Sea Palace to interfere. Now he wouldn't mind some fresh seafood. He used the Dragon Sea art, the power of the wave. The princess marveled at how he controlled the power of the sea. 2 huge hands appeared behind him. The princess said it was one of the treasures of the Dragon Sea, the Sea Dragon Fist. Yongyul said that she must be curious how he got them. If she kneels before him, he might tell her. If she doesn't, everyone here dies. The viceroy asked what happened to Yulpo's head. He asked for an explanation of the hands. Yongyul said, does he really need an explanation? It's obvious. This mermaid oil is selling so well it's in high demand. But there aren't enough mermaids. Luckily, he had these children and was able to transform them into mermaids, so he had the right supplies to meet the demand. The production of this salted butter is a complicated process, but if you mix it with some commodities, they sell even better and make a big profit too. These are the basics of business. But then Gildon said his stupid mouth filled his fairness scale. Unfortunately for him, he'll die tonight even if he begs Gildon, because this is the night that Hong Gildon will fight him. Yongyul laughed and asked if he was going to kill him. Gildon doesn't think Yongyul knows that the demons are looking for him. He asks why Gildon thinks he didn't turn him in, instead of saying the chapter would benefit from bringing them his dead carcass. No one can beat him when he is at sea. He told Gildon not to pretend he didn't know such an obvious thing, but Gildon didn't listen to him and fired. It cost the head nothing to dodge his shot. He was saying that it didn't matter how strong Gildon was if he couldn't use that power. This was, after all, the first time he'd been in such a difficult situation, which was fundamentally different from where he'd fought before. After all, this was on land. It didn't matter to Gildon. He wanted to make it harder for the head of the Yulpo to get around. Hilda yelled at him not to do that. It was not desirable for him to destroy the top of the ship. She explained that they don't sink because of the air left inside. If the top broke, they would sink instantly. And the kids are still below deck. It's too dangerous. Yongyul replied that she was actually quite good at building ships. He seemed to be a little impressed by that. But more surprisingly, the kids are still below deck. And even despite the situation, he can't make up his mind. Hilda was screaming about how he was just crazy. He was out of his mind. She had witnessed his past crimes. She told him to look at what he had done, calling him crazy. Yongyul asked if she meant Choi, who she was walking around town with. There's something she doesn't know. His mom is actually pretending to be crazy. This news comes as a great shock to the transformed boy. One day, Yongyul disguised himself, stole the cargo, gave them a little accident show, and buried the whole crew. The boy's mom only stayed alive because he needed someone to testify. After testifying, she just pretended to be out of her mind. After all, if she didn't cross the head of Yulpo, he would leave her life, or she and her son will join her husband. Yongyul said that Kosla belongs to him despite the fact that he now bows to the former king.
After all, when the new king rises, Kosla will definitely be his.
The viceroy's ship opened fire. The viceroy shouted for them to kill the monster. A lot of nukes were flying straight at him. He didn't seem to think about dodging them at all. With his giant arms, he fended off whatever was flying at him. It cost him nothing. But at one point, he just reflected the cannonballs in the opposite direction from him. The cannonballs hit right where they came from. They hit the ships. The helm was broken, and the ship began to drift. This situation was reminiscent of the way they had broken the helm at Gildon's. Yong-yul said that he doesn't even know if he could have survived without the help of the Dragon Palace. Let them just look at him. He would deal with them once he had taken care of the Viceroy's men. With those words, he aimed another core, which fragged the ship. The princess asks, how dare he use a stolen weapon? Did he really think he would be safe in her sea? She used a spade throw, single point. Yong-yul said he was sorry. After all, he didn't even notice an attack that couldn't even reach him. The dragon people were surprised that he had dispersed the princess's attack. Could he really be Sir Yongchan? He jumped into the water with a burst of speed, which caused a wave that pushed the underwater people away. The princess looked at him with eyes that were full of hatred. Yong-yul said that she should know that it was the Dragon King's weapon. He began to create a whirlpool that attracted sea creatures. The princess replied that it was because it was the Dragon King's weapon that she was going to return it to its rightful place. And she also planned to find out the method by which he obtained the weapon. She used the 3 dragons, a gust. Yong-yul called her a smart princess. All of her techniques belonged to the Dragon King. There was an evil smirk on his face. He used 8 dragons, gust. His attack was much more powerful than hers. The 2 attacks collided. His attack had broken through her impulse and was now coming straight at her. Yong-yul shouted that if she hadn't used them, she would have been able to survive. But one should never underestimate Hong Gildon. He appeared behind the princess, ready to strike. He used his power. From its impact, the wave was already trying to cover the ships. The viceroy and his subordinates watched this with horror. The water had already almost covered the cages with the children. Yong-yul said it was unbelievable. Gildon can even block the water dragon technique. He's definitely worth the effort. Gildon told the princess that it was now her turn to carry him on her back. After he said that, she looked away embarrassed. A slight blush appeared on her blue skin. He wondered if she could handle it while Yong-yul towered over them. She told him to hold on tight. Yong-yul used a water dragon. His attacks were still missing the target, but he used his giant hand. She got hit by a dolphin, which threw them off balance. But Gildon was determined not to miss this great chance for him. It was going up his arm. Yong-yul shouted that he wouldn't be able to get too close. He wouldn't be able to do what he wanted to do. Yong-yul asked, did he really think he could shoot within his range? He used the dragon art, the dragon dance. Shandol said he was fast. Hilda replied that at that speed he couldn't even shoot, let alone aim. Gildon said, gunning faster than the dragon, dodging its attacks. Yong-yul shouted for him to try with a shaky muzzle, but before he could finish, Gildon's weapon came up to his head. Gildon used an artillery headshot right on his face. This attack clearly hurt the head of Yulpo and caused him to fly away, but it landed on the water, as Gildon fell into the water with a huge splash. Yong-yul's hair was unraveling, and scratches appeared on his face. He let his huge hands go under the water, namely to where Gildon was, which he noticed. But the princess managed to help him. They swam away from the hands that chased them from behind. Gildon already wanted to use his technique, namely the Shaolin 5-fist technique, the victory machine. This attack struck Yong-yul. He said that it just couldn't be, because it was a victory machine gun. The head asked where he got this weapon from and why it still fires without reloading. Gildon replied that he can shoot even when submerged in water, because his victory rifle is charged with the fire of his heart. Of course, Yong-yul wouldn't just listen to this boring nonsense. He used the sea dragon art, Dragon Slug. Gildon fended off his attacks, but it blocked the view. As it turned out, he used the sea dragon art, splashing water with his fist to block their view. That's a very clever move from the head of Yulpo. His hand appeared from under the water. Gildon tried to hold on somehow. Yong-yul shouted about how he was finally caught. He used the sea dragon art, the power of the wave. Gildon was caught in that maelstrom. Yong-yul used the supreme skill, Dragon Jaws, but Gildon had time to use the switch, East Flare, West Flare. Yong-yul said it's not bad, that's just adorable. Gildon said the head wasn't a demon. He asked how he got such a powerful skill. Gildon asked if he was naive. Yong-yul just laughed hearing that from him. Yong-yul asked if he looked like a rookie businessman who was in the business of making stupid deals with all sorts of demons. He is a big businessman making deals all over the country. He has even exceeded the expectations of the Qin people. He asked if the tricks were still in Gildon. He recognized that the man was also beyond the level of humans in terms of strength. And if he didn't know, Gildon's powers came from their side. Yong-yul suggested he join him. He might even like it. Gildon replied that there was no way someone like him could change his mind. He asked which side the head was talking about. The head of the Yulpo realized that he knew nothing. He asked what Gildon knew about his father. Changdol replied that he was definitely a Joseon villain. Gildon replied that his father had gone to America to feed his family. He's a hero. Jong Yul says that he became a hero and a dark-skinned man because of his power. An outstanding man is given enlightenment, which turns him into a dark-skinned man. Many heroes from different mythologies became dark-skinned when they proved themselves worthy. And Gildon was one who was blessed with that power without his knowledge. His destiny is the enlightenment of all. And it was Gildon who was chosen.
On this day, Jong Yul welcomed him, the one who was baptized with spiritual enlightenment.
Shandol shouted that it was his name. He had figured out the Demon King's name, the King of Awakening. Hilda said it was disgusting to even say it. He's behind all of this. Gildon told him not to lie. Jong Yul replied that his mother had lied to him. He also complimented that it must be shocking to know the secret of his birth. He's happy. This means that Gildon was chosen by him on this land. In addition, his squad is made up of a woman, an Asian, and a dark-skinned man. It's a perfect combination. Gildon attacked him. Jong Yul dodged again. He replied that what Gildon wanted to do was to do it like this. In fact, he showed it. Shandol shouted that the viceroy had lowered the ladder. The children were turned into mermaids. The subordinates began to lift the children onto the ship. Now that Chandel and Hilda have gotten all the kids out, now they can help Gildon. The kid couldn't believe it was real. That it was really real. Gildon and Jong Yul were still fighting. Jong Yul decided to take the initiative. The princess used the water dragon spear. Gildon lands a javelin to the body with this one. He was ready for Jong Yul's attack. The two powerful forces clashed again. After such a powerful attack, Gildon flew off. Jong Yul replied that Gildon is a good fighter. However, the question is how different they are. The sea was everything to Jong Yul. He had a powerful weapon here in the Dragon Sea, and now he can get endless amounts of mana. The princess asked him what they should do. Gildon replied that his power was only for catching demons. When he uses the power against people, the attacks are much weaker. It practically drops to 1/10 of normal. He needs to put his full strength into a one-hit attack, so that Jong Yul can't recover mana. But then Jong Yul was attacked by a mermaid. The kid scratched him. It was Sung-gu, with only hatred in his eyes for the destroyer of his life and his parents. Jong Yul grabbed the boy's arm. He fell silent as he looked at the boy. Sung-gu shouted that he heard everything. He's the reason his father is dead and his mother is considered crazy by everyone in town. His mom's probably looking for him right now. A bat heard that. He flew right away. The woman said that her Sung-gu was here, standing outside the Yulpo head's estate. The guard kicked her, asking what this crazy woman was doing here, and in the middle of the night, he told her to go somewhere else. She told them to give her son to her. If they don't, she'll tell all about them. She's not really crazy. She will tell about what happened at sea that day. The guard looked at the other man who was telling her to come in. He said he'd take her. Gildon yelled for him to stop. The head of the Yulpo threw the boy aside. He was lying on the scarlet water. Minnow cried when she saw all this. Jong Yul said that he treated them so well. It annoys him that parasites who don't even know their place are trying to ruin everything. It was clear to Gildon now. He asked him if Jong Yul knew why the hero mask was created, and why these objects were created and scattered around the world. Jong Yul asked what the reason was. Gildon replied, to teach people like him what justice means. He was clearly furious. Jong Yul replied that there was a deep meaning to this hero mask. He offered to learn from this justice. Gildon jumped to attack him. He used his weapon, whose attack hit the water. The ships began to shake. Jong Yul said that the force was unbelievable, and also that Gildon definitely thought the explosion would flip him up and throw him farther out to sea. It was a good idea. Gildon hopped from one hand to the other. A hand grabbed his leg, and now Jong Yul will teach him what justice means. Gildon pulled out a flask. Fire appeared at his mouth, after which a silver bullet appeared in his teeth. Jong Yul couldn't believe that it was a silver bullet, a bullet that a demon can't heal from. He had heard that it could only be used by those who had mastered the Hwanun technique. Jong Yul's hand was already close to Gildon, but he attacked her. There was an explosion. Everyone stared at it intently. Part of Jong Yul's arm had fallen off and his bone was visible. Jong Yul asked how dare he and called him a bastard. Now Gildon was really pissing him off. His arm was broken, but it's still not enough to kill him. Gildon showed the direction with his fingers. It was a silver bullet flying. It shot through Jong Yul's flesh. Gildon replied that if the bullet had struck him, it could do so again. After all, it was a silver bullet. That bullet had tortured his body many times. Jong Yul urgently needs the sea. Every time it enters the sea, it recovers. But Shandol prevented him from doing so by throwing him back up. Jong Yul yelled for him to stay out of the way. Hilda jumped up to him. She used a cross strike. She said she couldn't repay him in full. But he will take back his sins. She used the windmill cut. Zhang Yul shouted that when he recovered, he would destroy these bugs first. He has reached his limit and he needs to leave. Gildon's hand touched his head, and he said that Zhang Yul had made a big mistake. He told him to open his mouth, so he can take a good stab at justice. Fire appeared in his hand as he struck. Zhang Yul's body began to burn. The fireball flew down into the sea. Gildon said that even if Zhang Yul wins, he won't lose, because he's Gildon. But the head was saved from a killing attack by a stranger. His blow hit the sea. He held Zhang Yul and looked up at Gildon. The stranger said he was here at the behest of the Lady of the Eight-Wheeled Spears. Things are complicated by the fact that Zhang Yul is one of the members of the group. They can't arrest him because he's a Yakdu. But it's okay, because they can't escape the lady's gaze. He told them to just wait. They'll meet again soon. The boy was bandaged while Minho shouted his name, Seonggu. The viceroy asked the princess of the Dragon Palace to listen to them. He asked if her soldiers could help them get back to shore. Zhang Yul has already escaped, but there are still many of his men left. They need to rescue the injured children and apprehend the criminals. The princess replied that she would be glad to help. She would remember Viceroy Hasla's name and what he had done. The viceroy replied that he appreciated their cooperation. They would survey the damage to the palace and get back to them. The princess thanked him. They will drive the ship and then go to Mat Yongak-san. Shandal noticed that Gildon was kind of quiet. He must have been shocked by the secret of his birth. Gildon offered to read a poem that reminded him of the past. Shandal agreed, but when Shandal heard it, he told him to stop, for he had already heard it. The guards were leading the woman. She asked where they were taking her. Are they really going to where her son is? The guard asked if it was now. The guard struck her in the face with his sword. He said a mad woman can't appreciate the life she's been given and sit still. So she would die just like her son. The woman asked what he was talking about. The guard replied that her son was dead. He had turned him into a mermaid. And now he's going to send the woman to where her son is, just like he promised. He slapped her one more time. The guard told her not to think they would be nice to her and called her crazy. She called them bad people. But then the viceroy's guards burst in. The viceroy orders all Yulpo merchants to come with them. The man asked what was going on. The viceroy must know that their merchants are top class. They've been in business since before the war. Even if he's the head, he can't barge in here so unfairly. The viceroy told him to shut up. He had already heard about their dirty business from Zhang Yul. Their crimes had been confirmed. They would be arrested and forced to tell everything they had done. It was a tense situation. Zhang Yul's guards drew their weapons. The viceroy asked if they were going to fight them. They've already been caught. But if they so desire, the viceroy's guards don't mind fighting. The viceroy's men began to attack. But it was all pointless because the chapter's guards were stronger. They quickly killed most of the viceroy's soldiers. Zhang Yul's guards said that they were paid a lot for skills useful to the business. The viceroy won't be able to arrest them with the help of new recruits. The viceroy said that they, the thugs, were useless. In response, he was asked if he was going to pretend to be blind. The viceroy and his men were pinned against the wall. The guards were just leaving. They need to kill the viceroy and get the cargo to the sea. The man pushed away the woman who was still there. He said it was time to finish her off. And now why doesn't she shut up for good? The man wondered if the viceroy still had the strength to beg for mercy. If he were in his place, he would have started whimpering by now. The merchants forgot something. Everything that's happened here is their fault. The auditor came and told them to stop. He looked at them with disdain. He called them despicable people who take advantage of other people's lives for something that only they find valuable. The viceroy couldn't believe his eyes that it was the royal auditor. He used his medallion. From it, evil monsters began to appear, who were ready to attack the merchants. The viceroys and his men looked on in horror. Some escaped in time to get their cargo to the ship, but what they didn't know was that a monster was flying behind them. He turned into a man with wings and threw bombs at their ships. The ships began to explode with bright flames. Meanwhile, the auditor had already dealt with all the merchants. The viceroy said he was the king's auditor. It still didn't make sense to him. The auditor replied that it was true. He is Park Mun-soo, the royal auditor. He asked if they were going to fight him. The viceroy replied that no. Even though he is different, he cannot judge him because his actions were right. A small smile appeared on the auditor's face. Park Mun-soo advised him not to mention his participation in the report. He will remember this viceroy, for he is true to his position and his duty. The others were already on their way to Mount Yongsan. It looked kind of creepy. Shandal asked if this was really that mountain. It does look like a mountain. The princess gave Gildon the dragon's scales. She told him to throw the scales into the sea when he got back to shore. She will summon the princess, and she will pick them up. Also, the princess added that she is not disposable, so let them call her. They handed them a lunchbox. The princess told them to eat when they were hungry. It is a lunch made with fresh seafood from the palace. Gildon thanked her and said they would love to try it. Chandol wanted to ask if their ingredients had once been palace servants, but he didn't. Guillaume said goodbye to the princess and said they would see each other soon. As they began to climb the mountain, someone was already following them. It was a creature with cat eyes. Gildon said they had been wandering for a long time, but had found nothing. He asked if this was definitely the right place. The queen's men will soon track them down. He used the call of transportation, the palanquin, but it fell apart. Hilda replied that it wouldn't work. The island is covered with a powerful seal. Chandol said he was tired from all the walking and offered to take a break as well as a snack. The boys wondered what goes into a gourmet dragon palace dinner. They opened the box. Well, the cat's already eaten it all. They were puzzled about it and didn't understand when she got in there. Gildon picked up the cat and asked what was it about the dragon palace eating live pig cats. Chandol asked if it wasn't a stray cat. They noticed a bell around her neck as well. It's definitely not a stray cat. Hilda said she had a master. He must be close by somewhere. Chandol asked why they should even be looking for her master. The girl replied that way they could find a clue as to what they were looking for. But then they heard some sound. The cat abruptly broke free and ran away. They realized something was coming. It was a huge boar, but then he was swallowed by some monster. This monster was long and big. It even resembled an insect in some ways. They were surprised that it could have been an emugi. Gildon said it was true, and that was too bad. He told them to look at his uniform. It stopped them from trying to turn into dragons. When they eat and live as they please instead of evolving, they turn into monsters like this. If Gildon uses magic, he will be spotted. If this monster smells him, he won't be able to defeat him. Some girl with pink hair appeared behind them and said that she knew a lot. She introduced herself as Tami, the spirit of Yonok-san. They looked at her in surprise. Tammy asked who he was. He introduced himself as Hong Gildon, apprentice to the Dream Masters of Anbondasan. He had come here to find the power hidden in this place to help him fight the Vampire King. Tammy screamed and thanked the Hermit Lord. He had sent her a hero. The girl ran up to them and said she was glad to meet them. She asked if there had been any inconvenience on arrival. Gildon said she was the one who ate their lunch. He told her not to play dumb. Tammy revealed that Yonok-san is no longer a sacred site. She is a deity who protects Sodo, that is, the place where sacrifices to the village priests take place. But suddenly, an emugi named Khan attacked. She fought her, but her opponent was too strong. She just couldn't overpower her. Kang has set up sealing stones to pass through to this sacred island, and she is trying to expand her territory by increasing the number of stones. Hilda asked what Kang needed. The girl replied that she was looking for Huanan's legacy sealed on the island. She gave up her transformation into a dragon for the sealed power of Huanun. She's trying to become king of the monsters. Gildon asked her where the seals are. The girl replied that if anyone tried to break Khan's seal, their memories would be erased by her magic. Chandol asked Gildon if that made sense. Gildon replied that it was the art of the immortals, but they can only see Huanan's legacy when they break the seal. After all, the sealed object will belong to whoever destroys it first. They need to find and solve it before Kang does. He suggested we split up and search. Hilda said to wait. She asked Tammy if she had ever heard of the Golden Guardians. The girl replied that she didn't know who it was. It is a desert island. Gildon has noticed that this island is surprisingly huge. You can't just wander around without a purpose. You have to find a path. But another girl appeared behind him. He asked who she was. The girl replied that she was a hunter. She waited for him to be alone because she had something to say. It's actually Tammy who builds seals to establish her territory, not Khan. The girl said Tammy was fooling them, and Tammy is her pet. She said that Yonok-san is located on a small island where you can't use magic. There's something up there that prevents the use of magic. It's to make sure they non-humans can't enter this area. Gildon asked, then how this monster emugi got here? The girl replied that this was because Tommy is the deity of the mountain and is also in charge of Sodo. She set the 7 sealing stones around the seal. Under the seal is the gateway to Sodo, and these 7 seals create a passage through the island. Gildon looked somewhere and asked who it was. It was Kang. She asked why he had stopped talking. Was this the type of conversation she shouldn't hear? Or they planned to kill them, and then invade this island? Gildon dodged her attack. He immediately used his weapon and hit her face. Kang called all humans bastards. She is a goddess on this earth, and they used to pray to her. People worshipped and sacrificed to her, but everything changed when they tried to destroy her. They called her a demon, blew up her sanctuary, and kicked her out. Now that she actually looks like a demon, She can take their bodies and lives, and she promises to enjoy them to the fullest. The girl used a battle amulet, a mechanical toad. After her summoning, a mechanical toad appeared. She began to absorb the green smoke. Kang asked, wondering if she was absorbing her poison. Gildon said he had heard of this technique before. This toad once fought monsters and eventually lost. For a while it was dead. But thanks to reverse engineering, it was revived. The girl replied that he was a military mechanical toad, and she will drive this machine. He suddenly felt sick. He told the huntress to wait. First, they need to avoid Khan's poisonous attacks. Even if they inhaled just a little, they would be paralyzed. She replied that it would be neater. Kang said it would taste much better to eat them alive. The mechanical toad used its skill, a flamethrower. Her attacks hit the monster. Kang asked how dare they fight her. She called them filthy brats. Her attack hit the toad. She noticed that they had disappeared somewhere. They managed to escape. Gildon asked if it was okay that they left the mechanical toad there. The girl replied that it was fine. She could summon it with electromagnetic force, but it would take a little time to recall him. For starters, she gave him an herb that he must eat. Kang was originally known as a demon who takes humans as sacrifice and ate them. She was banished by the monster subjugation group and fled here. Gildon said the reason was the exile. He asked why she had chosen to speak to him alone. Replied to avoid Tammy's eyes. She's always supportive of Imugi. If Tammy hadn't set those stones to create a territory, the girl would have been able to kill Kang sooner. Now they need to break the Sade on top of Yongak-san. If they break it, Soda will be freed. Then the sealing stones will not be a passageway, but a space to suppress Khan. The girl asked if he would help make it happen. The power of science behind them. The woman was telling the maids to take care of the other maids that didn't have liquid in them. They were not heavy. After they grind them into powder, they need to scatter it outside the palace. The queen stood in front of a large cauldron. She stuck her brush into the purple liquid. A face appeared on the brush which asks why. Tassel asked what the queen was going to write. She was curious. She drew an incomprehensible circle with symbols. In the center where the eye had been, it began to glow. And that's when the real eye opened there. The queen has succeeded. With this method, she can summon him here. She needs to condense the blood and turn it into a bloodstone. She definitely needs to make a bloodstone. There was a voice calling her mom. The stranger who took Jong-yul came. He apologized for the unexpected visit, and also reported the news that Jong-yul of the 8-wheeled spears had been defeated by Hong Gildong. He said that Gildon was blessed with Hwanun's magic. The queen asked if they went to Yonok-san. She also asked for the murderer she let go. He replied that yes. They can order the 8-wheeled spears to surround Yonok-san. The queen said to keep them. The Demon King just addressed her in her head. She knows what he wants. She said to get Anson. Tammy said they got her. Since they met, they're in trouble. He wanted to say her name, but the girl said to be called God. Gildon did so, and then asked if it was true. She replied that it was both true and untrue. It was because they had misunderstood her. It was true that Kang had arrived here, as was the fact that the girl had cleared the place using the sealing stones. She met her 4 years ago. She was thrown ashore by a strong sea wave. She couldn't breathe because she was pinned by the seal. Kang asked to be let in here. Tammy replied that she couldn't do that because she smelled blood. This is a sacred place. Kang asked that she allow her, a sinner, to live here. She was originally a deity of another place. She was chased away and was washed away by the waves. This place is surrounded by a huge sea. She won't hurt anyone just by living here. She begged for her cruel life to be pitied. Tammy used the sealing stones and made room for her because she didn't see anything wrong with it. Kang was well educated and roughly behaved while they were here. They always had wonderful conversations. One day, she learned through her predictions that the skull moon would rise. It's a phenomenon where the other side of the moon rises and emits the aura of a demon king. When demons see the skull moon, they lose their minds and go mad. She warned Kang not to leave the cave until she said so. But that day, the hunters arrived. In order to fight the monsters, they threw a lot of bombs on Kang's cave. Kang is vulnerable to fire because of old wounds. She was injured in the explosion and tried to get out of the cave. Eventually, she saw the skull moon and lost her mind. No matter how hard she tried to calm her down, the girl couldn't. So Kang turned into a dangerous demon. She asked why the hunters did it. The huntress replied that it was a demon. The girl said that no matter how she sees Kang or what she thinks of her, she's still a demon. Humans and demons can't exist. Demons must be destroyed. Gildon asked why she had lied to him. The huntress replied that she was failing in her duties as a deity. A deity has no right to bring demons into a sacred place on a whim. She asked what would happen if the world found out what she was doing here. How the world would punish her. She'll be cast out, and then more demons will come here. Tammy replied that Kang had always said her prayers and tried her best to become human again. If she hadn't lost her mind and practiced a little more, she would have managed to become human again. Tammy said she would do her best to bring her to her senses. And after that, there wouldn't be any problems. Hilda said it was strange. Chandol asked what she meant. Gildon said that if they failed but survived, they should come here. But he's not here, and this island is uninhabited. Chandol said he'd already told me that this was Sodo. Demons can't get in here. He asked if she didn't want to hide from the demons, and demons aren't the only ones who can't get in here. They couldn't even get close to this place because of the rocks. If she's thinking about running away, he doesn't think it's the best option. Hilda began to tell me that all her friends had died because of the storm. She was the only one who had survived. Chandol replied that he understood how she felt. Even though she doesn't know much about Joseon, she still came here. They just need to get some rest. He asked about her homeland. The girl asked if he was really interested. He said he was, because they're friends. Meanwhile, Chandol sat down because he was tired, but he sees a rock and wonders what it even is. Then he heard a voice saying she had found him. It was Deli. He was very surprised to see her here. He asked why she was here, and what happened to her. The girl replied that she was already dead. This news really shocked him. She took his hand and told him to follow her. He asked where. She said to her house. Her house wasn't that far away. The man said enemy troops were coming down the river. He'll be back soon. Chandol said as everyone began to gather, and called the man uncle. The girl told her daddy to take care of himself, but there were too many dead. Chandol was looking for his uncle. He saw his corpse already. The assistant viceroy said that they still had not paid for the grain. The woman replied that she was very sorry. Her husband had recently died, and they were in a difficult situation. He called her too noisy. If she didn't pay her debt, she became a slave by law. The woman belongs to them now. The boy ran as hard as he could. He found the little girl lying down and asked where her mom was. She just cried. Chandol stormed in and said they have paid their debts. He asked how dare they do such a thing to a single mother, just to be compensated for $1 amount. They are not allowed to do such stupid things because his uncle risked his life to protect this city. All they can do is sell people into slavery. The security guards started beating him. The deputy replied that he was just doing what had to be done by law. He was walking backwards, covered in abrasions and wounds. He went back, but already with a gun. The man yelled out what he was doing. He was asking for help. Chandol responded that this town is just wrong. Khan said it was the right thing to do. The huntress said that Tammy had lost her right to be a guardian. This island has been invaded by demons, so it can't continue to be called Sodo. She will break the sod on top of the mountain. They will protect this island from the demons with their weapons.
Tammy says that their arrogance has led to this situation. She asks if they don't know that hostile prejudice turns even God into a demon.
I thought she said she was going to cure Khan. Gildon replied that it was too late. His amulet of 8 spirits only detects demons. He is also connected to a sacred hermit and can send signals. The higher constellation had already been informed that there were demons here. They had no choice, and there is only one way out. They need to get rid of Khan. The choice is Tammy's. If she doesn't want to get rid of her, so be it. Then he'll be the one to kill her. She just turned and ran. The huntress said he was smarter than she thought. He warned her. He will only catch Khan, but will not be part of her plan to destroy Sodo. The girl said that was enough. She noted all the places Khan had appeared. If you mark the boundaries of the ceiling stones, then you can analyze where she's been and figure out her current location. The girl said she was inventing a demon tracker and asked to borrow an 8-pointed bell. If she took it apart and figured out how it worked, she could mass produce them. They could wipe out all the demons. Gildon replied that it would be an injustice. He said to duck, because he senses something. Hilda and Chandol were floating in the air. Kang said that thanks to black magic, they were hers now. Together, they can protect Sodo from enemies. The two of them are very lucky to be here. And now her vagrancy will be over. Pretty soon, she will replace Tammy and become the deity of this place. The higher constellation knows she let the demon in here, and sends someone to drive her away. When that happens, all she has to do is get rid of those who want to destroy Sodo. She will become the new deity of this land. She wanted to tell Tammy then that this place would soon change. But that was impossible because of the properties of Mount Yongak-san. But now she can become so strong she won't have to lift a finger. She's meant to be here. She noticed them. She asked if they had heard everything she said. They really have no manners, for they were spying on a woman. She said that they wouldn't be able to use Taoist magic. Gildon replied that it is unfair if she pays a good man with malice. He exists to punish people like her. He will kill her without the aid of magic, and his power comes from the flames of his heart. Khan shouted that she would defeat him. She would show why she was called God. He used his weapon. She was telling him to shoot as much as he wanted. His science and space distortion skills are negligible. The mechanical toad used a throw. The huntress said this was their chance. She's gonna give this demon a baptism of fire. They used artillery, concentrated shock, the black magnum of victory, chain reaction. She was already lying on the ground. He went to her head. She screamed that she would not be killed by him. Tammy said the two of them were here. She stood in front of her and spoke, ordering her to stop where he was standing. She's gonna take Kang to the cave and take care of her. She wants to do a 30-day fast on her. Gildon asked if she thought the lowlife was grateful to her. Tammy asked what he meant. He told Kang to tell Tammy all about his plan. Kang replied that since it had come to that, there was no point in hiding it. She said that Tammy didn't deserve to be a guardian deity, because she let a demon in here and upset the balance. She wants to replace her because she's tired of wandering around. If she can live here, she won't have to see people anymore. To prove competence, she will get rid of all intruders and protect Soto as a guardian. She'll become the god of Mount Yonok-san instead of Tommy. If she doesn't like it, let her attack. Tammy couldn't believe what she was hearing. Gildon said she finally showed her real face. He told her not to waste her time exorcising Khan. He'll burn her. Kang said it was just between the two of them. She asked that Tammy do it with her own hands. If she is the deity of this land, she should behave accordingly. Tammy stopped him. She says it's because Kang is sick. They don't know that Kang is just sick. She's not herself. She's not an evil spirit. If they give her time, she'll make it better again. Gildon asked why he should give her time. He could make her better right now. Tammy replied that he didn't want to listen to the deity. She already wanted to attack him. But then a man arrived and told her to stop right there. It was the court investigator. He told the deity of Mount Yonok-san Tommy to come forward and listen to the order from the Supreme Constellation.